Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 151. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my boisterous baby boy, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
I'm good. I've been getting some work done. I have my lights up, so I forgot to take some of this stuff down because I was filming some stuff.
Cool.
But
it's exciting.
Yeah, it feels good. It's been a minute. I try not to make stuff on my channel unless I feel like I want to. You know,
right.
Sometimes that means there's weeks where just nothing shows up. But I think it's better.
I was gonna say I thought you were gonna stop. Sometimes I don't like to make stuff, and that was just gonna be the end.
Well, that also.
Yeah. Well, good to see you, my friend, and Dustin Furman, of course, our executive producer, permanent member of Sacred Symbols. Welcome. How are you, my handsome, round-headed friend?
I'm well. Feels like a good day so far. Jury's still out. When you said 151, I realized what popped in my head was the Pokemon Mew.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a few Pokemon that I can remember the number of, and it's probably just my brain is broken because I was, Pokemon 2001 for me, first grade, and I was like, 151. This is the episode of Mew. That's all I'm good for.
That is a truly insane thing to think.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I would argue that it's even sadder that I was in high school playing Pokemon. So,
I was in first grade.
When Pokemon came out, I was like, "Oh yeah!" With our wires connected to our Pokemon our Game Boy Pockets.
Yeah.
But we weren't in elementary school.
No,
I'll tell you that much. All right, boys. Well, good to see you and good to see everyone out there. Welcome to Sacred Symbols, our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can support it and get it 3 days early and ad-free at Last Stand Media. Or at patreon.com/laststandmedia, I'm sorry. We also have merch at laststandmedia.shop, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute. I wanted to take a second to talk about Sacred Symbols Plus a little bit more deeply. It's our Patreon-exclusive episode of the show we do each week. Interviews, spoiler casts, mailbags, one-off conversations, all of the rest. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. Last 2 weeks, I spoke with David Jaffe, creator of God of War and Twisted Metal, and I spoke with Ryan McCaffrey, IGN's longest tenured editor now, and an old friend of mine, my old desk mate, actually. He used to sit across from a little half barrier from me, so I got to stare at him for a very long time. I got to know him very well, and I got to know his face. Sometimes he would just type and look at his monitor, and I would just stare at him for minutes and minutes at a time. But we had a really great conversation about a lot of different things. Next week, Dustin is going to do a Nier Replicant spoiler cast, so we're going to get back into those. I want to start rolling with some other spoiler casts too. Resident Evil 8 we have to do at some point. I don't know what we're going to do with Returnal. We'll all talk about that game in a little while, and we'll figure that out. But I did want to read this letter from Paul Bowden, who wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Hello, Gentlemen 3. I've been loving the recent interviews on Sacred Symbols Plus with Jaffe and Ryan. Do you think the success of these and the notably amicable tone carried through the entirety of these long-form interviews will open the door to more figures from industry coming to Last Stand? So many individuals I'd love to see you chat with. Barlog, Stig Amundsen, Drugman, to name a few. Also, will we ever see Colin and Jaffe get a condo together and record a weekly show?"
Whoa.
So the last thing is unlikely, but I did Jaffe's show for 4 hours. If people wanted to watch that 4-hour marathon conversation, including taking live calls, which we're going to steal and start doing on Sacred Symbols Plus soon. I've been talking to Dustin about that. Awesome idea. Love it. And then I was on a show again to talk about Israel and Palestine, just totally unrelated conversation. So it's been cool, but it's going to be hard for us to get the likes of Barlog and I talked to Neil behind the scenes. He's a friend of mine, but getting him to appeal, I don't even really want to talk to him about games. I would love for him to be on the show to talk about books or something random, really pick his brain about his creative process. But I wouldn't really count on that. But you can continue to give us suggestions. Ken Levine is someone I'm going to reach out to in the next couple of weeks. Another friend of mine that I think will do the show. So
that's exciting.
In fact, I would be surprised if he didn't do the show when I asked him. But I'm not going to put him on the spot. But I did just put him on the spot. All right, let's see here. Oh, speaking of Patreon, thank you to everyone.
What's going on?
I don't know.
11,930 at the time of recording.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I don't even really know what to say. Thank you so much for your love, kindness, and support. Biggest nerd culture podcast media type thing ever in Patreon history. All thanks to you guys out there. So thank you for your love and kindness and support. Stick around if you want. I know a lot of you came just for the Plus interviews, but we're going to continue to roll those out. And remember that most of our content is free. So if you are paycheck to paycheck, you don't have the money, you don't have the inclination, you can always listen to most of our content for free. And we do appreciate our free listeners as well, although we like to disparage them occasionally with names like Scallywag and Freeloaders. Let's see here. What else? Oh, merch. All right, so we talked about laststandmedia.shop. Vita means death. Mm-hmm. We can now go back to it because we know Vita is dead. As of August, we will no longer be able to publish games. Actually, as of July, we'll no be able to publish games. The store will remain up, so we're going to roll out 2 new pieces of art on laststandmedia.shop for new shirts. The art comes from artist Henry Maxwell, who I've worked with personally on some of our games at Lilymo. He's a great artist. And Dustin, what do you have to say about these new designs?
No, they're awesome. They are for the game Killzone Mercenaries and for Super Stardust.
Yep.
And if you're listening to this on our Patreon, they are live in the store right now. So go pick them up. And so we're very excited. Henry did a fantastic job. They look awesome. Definitely check these out. The other thing I want to say about merch is that we've got a lot of the feedback about what you guys want for the next update. I just want you to know that it's being worked on. And you can expect that soonish. Understand we're moving at a mile a minute for Last Stand all the time. So we're hearing the feedback. We're excited. There will be new merch designs.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Henry, for the new designs. We're trying to hire some new artists to get some new work going this summer, which will be cool. And then we'll continue to, I'd like to make them into stickers or do a poster. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but I want to continue to commemorate our beloved Vita. So thank you for your support on our merch made in America.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, I wanted to ask you about this one. We got this letter from David Graham.
Sure.
And it's about Dustin, but I feel like it speaks to something that might need to come up here. He says, Colin and the Rippers, nice little Full House reference. Dustin needs to be more broken if he's to be truly part of the show. I come to Sacred Symbols to listen to men who are comparably as broken and depressed as myself, and yet Dustin has yet to wish to off himself or otherwise wish for the sweet release of death, and he even appears to have a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. Therefore, the onus is on Colin to spirit drain this young boy so that he may too join we the neurotic and proud. This resonated with me, Chris. I never really thought about the cultural fit of Dustin on our show.
I love that this is a culture. This just depraved sadness is just part of the culture of the show. I don't know. I think people are overestimating the glimmer of hope. I think they want to see a glimmer of hope in Dustin's eyes, so they're like projecting it. But I don't think it's there.
Yeah,
I don't think it's there.
Yeah, I would say that any glimmer was at its maximum peak before he met me. And, so I mean, it might still be there, but it's a remnant. It's a relic. It's a fossil.
Right. That's fair. I mean, I definitely have the pessimism nailed down. Very little hope for good things. I need to work on the depression aspect. I think that, I can start. I don't know if there's any books you guys could recommend or I don't know, some movies. I just need to get there. I'm just not a very depressed person. But the fear is actually, this is always tucked in the back of my mind. I'm like, man, life's going pretty good. Not a lot of people I know dying. I'm very lucky. Mm-hmm. And that's just all going to come crumbling down at some point. I'm on the clock for some bad luck, really. Mm-hmm. Basically my entire 20s, I haven't had to deal with any major loss. That's it's coming for me. I know that.
That's always the thing, isn't it? Where you're just like, oh man, things are going really well right now. This can't possibly last.
No.
Yeah. That's always it's a very George Costanza thing to think. So you're well on your way.
There we go.
Sounds like we're in good shape. Thank you, David, for writing in. We'll break Dustin. I really have no doubt about that. So don't fear about that. Saul Nolasco wrote into us and said, good day, gentlemen. Colin, will you ever get curtains to stop messing with the exposure of your camera? Probably not. No, for real, I do have to. So it's fun because I can't believe we're going back to this already. All the stuff that was going on with the builders, right? When they came to my house was from the 3-month or 90-day thing that they were supposed to do after I bought my house. But because I bought my house in June or closed on my house in June, it was peak COVID. So they couldn't do anything. So now they have to come back and do a whole new host of actually more intrusive things, like all the pop nails and the drywall and everything that's really annoying. So I'm looking at the windows right now. I have blinds, but they're obviously not enough. So I could either get the the thicker blinds that or I can get curtains. But either way, I think I would expect this problem to continue for 12 to 18 months. Thank you for writing in, Saul. Phil Crone has a correction. This is a really interesting one, actually. Not a correction, but an insertion, actually. He says, hello to you, only CDC I trust. Blame me, really. Just to add some more fuel to last week's story that Crytek may have some PS5 issues, you may recall that Robinson the Journey is on the short list of games incompatible with the PS5. This is a really great point, Phil. Seems like there could be indeed some sort of issue with the engine if that's 2 games now confirmed to have issues on the PlayStation 5. Very good point. Robinson the Journey, the PSVR game from Crytek, very well regarded, but one of the very few games that won't run on PlayStation 5. And it's on CryEngine. Just like Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2, which was delayed only for PS5. I think there's something here. I don't know what, because I'm a complete idiot. But something is there. Something interesting is going on. Don't you think, Dustin?
Yeah, that I didn't even think about that. Because when we saw the list of incompatible games, it was like, okay, what is it about each individual game? Crytek is a weird engine. I'm thinking specifically, the most recent Crytek game I played was Hunt Showdown. I was playing it on PC, but I always felt that the performance for my PC felt a little off or a little weird. So this is an interesting one. I'm wondering if it's something like what. The only thing I can think is that if they knew something wasn't working with Robinson, then why didn't they know or could identify something? Unless they were just like, oh, it's incompatible. That game's not in development anymore. We're not going to reopen it. We're not going to look into it. And so now they're dealing with the ramifications of like not identifying the problem earlier on.
Yeah. It's also, I'm like looking, I mean, you're right. I'm looking at the list of games on CryEngine 5 as well. And we're not seeing anything about these other games. I mean, Hunt Showdown works on PS5.
That's true.
So there's something, there are no native PS5 games. Chris, do you think it's an engine problem or I mean that is an interesting point. I can't help but think if there's smoke there's fire, but it might not be this like ubiquitous problem.
I mean it could be like a massive coincidence that these are the that's always possible. It's always on the table, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear that it is an engine issue, if not just an engine wide issue, maybe just like these 2 games use the engine in a very specific way that might there's all sorts of bugs that go on in engines and just games as a whole. Like video games are houses of cards. Like it's insane how fragile just even a single line of code is. We've talked about this before, but just like that one line of code that destroyed Aliens Colonial Marines. Yeah, and it was literally just like all you had to do
and
was
it was found by a player, which was even worse.
Yeah, so I mean it's. I could believe that it's a coincidence, but I think it's more likely that it's like, this is probably just like an engine failure that is just so happened to be affecting these games because maybe they use the engine in similar ways that might not agree with the PlayStation architecture. I think that's a reasonable assumption to come to.
Yeah, I think so too. It could be even deeper, certainly deeper than my understanding goes about the way specific middleware interacts with Crytek or CryEngine, and then maybe you could probably do the work to try to see like who uses Havoc and who uses all these different things, and then which games are broken. And I don't know. That's well above my pay grade though.
The individual like minute details of like anything beyond just surface level aspects of these things are just like I have not built like
I've never even been
a CryEngine game,
I've never even been in our engine in Lilimo. Like we use GameMaker. I've never even been in it. Like I literally just write things in Google Docs and Google spreadsheets, and that's it. So Barry does all the hard work. All right. Last week we let everyone know, guys, that Ratchet and Clank previews and impressions, new videos were out. We have no interest, or at least I have no interest in seeing that stuff. We're not going to talk about it here. This week's game that has new coverage and video is Deathloop from Arcane, technically owned by Microsoft now, but still making a PS5, what seems like a timed exclusive. Game looks awesome. I'm not going to see any more of it. So again, I'm on blackout for that. But if you guys want to go check that out, you are more than welcome. We also found out that Microsoft and Bethesda's E3 time press conference will be the same. They're going to combine their press conference. Peyton Stone wrote into us and said, "What's up, CDC? Now that we know Starfield is 99% an Xbox console exclusive, what impact do you think the game will have on the PlayStation community?" Chris, I'm curious about what you think both about Microsoft and Bethesda going together, but allowing their independent branding to shine through, which is cool. in this way, I'm kind of wondering if we will see PS5 games there. I'm wondering if they will show Deathloop or if they will show Ghostwire Tokyo. I wonder if that's in the cards. I mean, that would be very interesting. But apart from that, what do you think about the rumors percolating that Starfield is a 2022 game? Clearly, I think at this point it is an Xbox exclusive.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if it wasn't. What do you think about all these percolating rumors?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. We did talk early on when they were initially talking about how they were going to approach this deal and how they were going to approach multi-platform. Before we had more concrete information, obviously, like, if there's ever, like, of the big three, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, the one that was most likely to put their games on other platforms, even though they did purchase studios, would be Microsoft. So I think there was like some level of hope that might have been the case. But at the same time, it's not all that surprising that, like, yeah, Starfield is pretty clearly going to be an Xbox exclusive. I don't think that's exactly setting the world on fire. I'm surprised at the amount of people who are surprised, to be honest, you know. But ultimately, I don't know. It's definitely a 2022 game because I don't think they would pit Starfield against Halo Infinite. I don't see why they would bother doing that. That seems really, unless they were like maybe aiming for September, which I doubt. It seems a bit too soon. Although, you know, Bethesda does have a habit of kind of surprising people with that stuff. I think it's cool that they're letting the branding kind of shine through. I don't know if you'll see Ghostwire though. I don't know if they'll. It's an interesting kind of situation there. They do have to show Ghostwire eventually. If not now, then like next year at E3 they will or like, you know, they have to shine some kind of light on it, because otherwise it's just gonna seem really petty, you know, just like, oh, we're not gonna shine a light on this game that we bought just because they have like a previous contractual obligation. That would seem like a real dick move. But, you know, I don't know how they're going to approach that. I don't think they'll show Deathloop, because Deathloop is kind of like based almost out at this point. You know, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's imminent. Yeah,
it's pretty imminent. I don't think it needs a presence at E3 really again, but it's an interesting time for sure. I don't know if the lack of Starfield will affect the PlayStation community. What I'm really itching to find out is how they're going to handle Elder Scrolls, and I know that's a while away. But yeah, that to me is far more interesting, because Starfield as a new IP was pretty much always in the cards as like an Xbox exclusive. But how are they going to handle something that has a legacy on other platforms? How are they going to handle a game that has an online MMO variant on all consoles and all machines that they're continuously updating? Like, will they? I don't know.
They seem to have. They seem to have. That's why I was kind of annoyed, and people were busting balls. But with Phil Spencer, I'm like, just say what you mean, dude. Yeah, I'm just so tired of the cagey, weird shit. I think they kind of or said, like, you know, Elder Scrolls Online is basically going to continue as presumably Minecraft, or not. I'm not the Minecraft we already knew, but presumably some of these other products, like I would assume Fallout Shelter and things that are already appearing on PlayStation that still get updates occasionally, Fallout 76, but. Yeah, the Starfield stuff's less surprising to me. 2022 release date is out there swirling. Also, the Tom Cruise, maybe have you guys seen this? Maybe starring in the game. And there's actually a weird. Did you guys see the weird tweet that Bethesda Game Studios did send him like years ago, saying like, it was something like, do you want to see the next big thing or whatever? And I'm like, what the fuck? There is a tweet that seems to have indicated that they were interested in at least getting in touch with Tom Cruise when this game was still secret. So. That would be, and I was saying to Micah, that would probably be you would assume the biggest star ever in a video game, right? Like, Tom Cruise is maybe top 5 most famous actors of all time, right? Yeah, like that's a big.
Well, yeah, you're probably. I was thinking of like, I'm trying to think of like other, like Kevin Spacey. I know was in that Call of Duty and
Call of Duty, right? But Kit Harington was in Call of Duty too.
No, Norman Reedus is pretty huge as well.
Right, but would you say Norman Reedus is bigger than Tom Cruise? I mean, that's the point I'm trying. Tom Cruise, like, it's like Denzel Washington in a video game, you know, or like Tom Hanks. I mean, that's kind of the level of person we're talking about.
I understand. You know I get what you're saying. That would be. I think that would be a waste of money in my opinion.
I agree. Like, maybe he's cool. I don't know.
Like, I like Tom Cruise and it's fine, but like, I don't know. In a Bethesda game, I'd want. I'd want as much money going to, making the game function correctly as opposed to like having any amount of budget going to an actor that's a little bit too expensive for what he's going to be appearing in. It's cool if that's cool. Like I don't really care about like mainstream actors being in video games. It's neat,
me neither.
I suppose, but the thing that I will say about the caginess is that I think they're deliberately cagey purely because they want to keep the door open for Game Pass on everything. And that's why they haven't been like you'll never see this game on PlayStation, because in some absurd this is probably never going to happen, but in their minds, if there's even a slight possibility that Game Pass in some way, shape, or form ends up on some PlayStation hardware, that would be locking themselves in the corner if they said never on PlayStation. And that's kind of how they continue to word things. It's like, yeah, we want exclusives on all platforms that Game Pass is available on. That is specifically the language that they use when they talk about this stuff. So it's annoying caginess, but it's kind of the nature of the beast when you're talking about an evolving service that has the potential to be on like a myriad of different platforms. It's very weird time we're living in general with Xbox.
Yeah, Microsoft at the very least is very diplomatic in the way they deal with their contemporaries, because they do obviously want to work with them. It's worth noting, by the way, we brought it up minutes ago now, but Deathloop, September 14th is when that game comes out, so a little while away, but not too far away. Dustin, what do you think about all we were talking about with Starfield, Microsoft and Xbox going at the same time? I mean, Xbox and Bethesda going at the same time. I think that is actually like the biggest sign of just like unifying the two companies in some way while allowing them to keep their brand, like their vertical and their culture. So where are your thoughts right now on all of this?
I think that mixing Bethesda and Xbox makes sense, especially because we've had some pretty lame Bethesda E3 where it's like you didn't really have a lot to show, but you really
I would say we only had one good Bethesda E3, which was the first one.
Yeah. Right. So I'm happy about that. As far as like Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, I can't imagine that they would put those on stage. I think that they're just going to keep those relegated to Sony. Just because imagine at your press conference, you have a game that, if it's tied to Xbox, if Bethesda was on their own separate event, I could see them saying, look at these games that are only on PlayStation. But since it's Microsoft showing off games on someone else's platform, I feel like it makes more sense to just have them put it in whatever Sony will inevitably do this summer. But
yeah,
that might be part of the calculus already, for all we know. I mean, it might just have been assumed that like you're going to you deal with the marketing for these games, which I think actually makes these kinds of timed exclusives palatable, because people just get money up front and remove all of this extra stuff from their plate so they can focus on other internal projects. So we don't really know. It's a win-win. I agree with you.
Right. And then as far as the Starfield thing, dude, like it's the rumors around this game are going nuts, because specifically in Defining Duke that just came out, Maddie had some very like strong rumors, I believe. I'm trying to remember the specific part, and then this morning, our friend Jason Schreier had like the exact opposite. And so it's like no one knows. I don't know. Maybe it's like people will believe Schreier above all else just because of his other reporting, but I don't know. Honestly, I'm so tired of talking about this game at this point, and just because we know
there we go.
There's nothing about it. We have like one trailer or one teaser that's nothing, and a screenshot that's nothing. So I'm excited. I don't care when it comes out. I mean, I guess I do care, but whenever this event, I just want to know. Like, I just don't even know if it's something we should even be excited about right now.
Yeah. People, it sounds petty, but I've said it before. Like, I don't care about Bethesda Game Studios, really. You have to go back to 2008 for a Bethesda Game Studios game I really, really liked. That's a long time ago. That's not them as a studio, like the flagship studio, I'm not so concerned about. So, like, the Starfield bouncing, ricocheting kind of rumors, I'm honestly not going to play the game. And I'd be honest with you on this too, although I guess it's unknowable and unprovable. I'm not so sure I'd play it if it was even on PlayStation, because I played Fallout 4 for like a little while. I barely touched Skyrim, really. I didn't play Fallout 76. I don't know that it's even really aimed at me anymore, but I have. a very high interest in what it is, because I think this is a show me moment for Bethesda Game Studios, which has been lapped by many other underfunded teams in comparison, certainly under privileged teams. A lot of these teams are in Eastern Europe and other places where money's a little tighter and resources are tighter. But I'm interested to see also what happens with some of these other developers, and I'm just really going to miss id and Machine Games on PlayStation. That's what I'm going to miss. And I might go to Xbox to play their games, but I'm probably not going to play. Like this fall, I'll probably play Halo just because I'm curious. I haven't played Halo in a long time. I want to see what this is all about, you know. But I'm not going to dump like 100 hours into a non-PlayStation game. I don't have that kind of time, really, if you want me to be an expert in this place, which I am. All right, what else here? Oh, in case you missed it, Days Gone is on Steam. So if you guys want to play it on Steam, it apparently actually has a higher Metacritic score on PC, which is not a huge surprise. And I think people are getting a little hopeful maybe that this is going to convince Sony to make a sequel. I wouldn't count on it. I think they've moved on. But you can go check that out there if you want. And also PlayStation has its own publisher page now, like a creator page there. And they are teasing, although ambiguously, more products. Again, I think God of War will be the next big one.
Yeah.
Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest has been announced and is starting June 10th. Sony will be there. Very interesting. This will be on, this will be on the eve of Ratchet and Clank's release date. So I hope it's not something just dumb like a launch trailer. It'd be very cool to see something new. So keep an eye out for that. They have a lot of different partners. I also wanted to ask you guys about just this rumor about Mass Effect 3's multiplayer coming back. It's not really a rumor, actually. It comes from various sources. I guess in an interview with CNET, I'm reading IGN right now. It's Mac Walters. So he said, quote, "I would never say no to that," talking about the multiplayer mode in Mass Effect 3. "We want to see what kind of reaction the Legendary Edition gets and what the demand for the multiplayer is. And then we'll ask ourselves if we have the resources and time to bring it up to the quality level we as fans want." End quote. Chris, what do you think of this? I thought this was weird. An interesting marketing ploy, perhaps, to keep the game bubbling. It's doing very well, and people are enjoying the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but I don't know. I remember Mass Effect 3. I had to review the game. I remember Mass Effect 3 is online. It's not... Am I misremembering this? I remember it being very boring and not good, but...
I don't know. I remember I had fun with it. It would be nice to see, just from a purist perspective of just like having these games as complete as they possibly can be. It would just be nice to have that. And I thought it was like a fairly well composed multiplayer. It wasn't super complicated. It wasn't super like, deep like Mass Effect typically is. But I think it did shine a light on the combat, which in Mass Effect 3 is, the best version of the combat in that trilogy up to that point. I think Andromeda actually, for as much as that game does wrong, obviously was like a little bit better in regards to combat, but I would like to see this. I think this could be fun, but what this sounds like to me is that they tried to do this and it didn't really work all that well, so they were like, let's maybe we'll get to this in the future, but like I suspect that they've worked on trying to get the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer in the Legendary Edition, and they probably cut it and they probably couldn't get it working, or probably couldn't get it up to snuff or up to polish as the rest of the game was. So they just decided to leave it on the cutting room floor, and they're kind of probing interest to see whether or not they should actually finish it up. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. Because I don't know why you would float an idea for something that you just haven't worked on at all. Like, surely they have the code for the original Mass Effect multiplayer. Surely they've thought about it. This must have come up. That's what it sounds like to me when I read it.
By the way, I'm sorry for clickety-clacking while you were talking. I was looking up, just to be real quick, too. There is no real excuse, because they did forego, like we might remember, Demiurge did expansion for the original Mass Effect called Pinnacle Station that is apparently lost. Like, they can't rebuild it, or so they're not willing to put in that effort, which could be done. They could port the game back to Unreal and do all of that. But it sounds like they might be willing to put the effort into this. Dustin, I'm just curious what you think of this, because I feel like it's missing the forest for the trees. I think people would have rather had Pinnacle Station. Not that it was a very important DLC pack, but like, why not put the work into saying like we have a fully expansive, all-inclusive version of Mass Effect, and then go to this as opposed to fixing the other minor things that are missing.
Right. I mean, it's been done where people can take the code and deconstruct it. It's not easy. Like, think we talked about in the past, like specifically Kingdom Hearts. I think the first one, when they did that re-release, they had to take the code off of a PS2 disc, I think. So it's not.
It's incredible how careless these publishers have been with their own sources. Some of them are lost, like in catastrophes and stuff, but many of them aren't. They just are gone. It's like, who the fuck? How'd you lose Kingdom Hearts? Why isn't that somewhere in like some sort of server or something? Anyway.
Yeah. As far as Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, this is a strange one because in the some of the podcasting I've done with our friend Mr. Matty Plays, he loves Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which I found odd just because I personally didn't know anyone who loved it, but maybe there is a community out there. I'm sure that they are anxious to leave a comment to us right now about it because, when you have a smaller community like this. So I don't know. Like, what is the real benefit? Are there people that want Mass Effect 3 multiplayer brought back and are willing to play it for an extended period of time? Like, I just don't know. There's so much else out there at this point. I don't see the point, but maybe I'm wrong.
I honestly think it's just a nice marketing thing for them to say, like, by the way, Legendary Edition's out if you missed that. So
it is also just objectively more value in the game, even if it's not necessarily something that most people are going to jump into. If you can have something that's repeatable, like I know this just from experience. If you play something with your friends, it's just way more fun, and it's a lot more. You're more likely to jump back into Mass Effect 3 after you've finished it for multiplayer than you would just like. No one's gonna replay Mass Effect 3 again, really. Like, unless it's like now and they haven't played it since it came out. I don't know. It's interesting. I would like to see it. I think it'd be cool to just have like a proper, a more complete version of the game. Although I agree that it's weird that they wouldn't try to fix this Pinnacle Station stuff before this.
Wasn't there a thing when this game came out that you had to... Did you have to play multiplayer for a part of the story?
No.
Am I misremembering this?
That doesn't sound right. You could be right. I could be misremembering this entire thing, but
there was
that
something...
would be surprising.
There was something that it definitely... I don't know if you had to, but I know you could affect your single-player campaign by playing multiplayer. Like, it was some kind of thing like you're gathering troops or something for the final battle, and it could affect your ending. I was trying to search it, but I had to go real deep into the internet.
Know. That sounds familiar, but also completely alien to me. I don't know what that's about.
There's a Reddit.
It sounds probably true.
Let's see. A Reddit post that says, agree or disagree, Mass Effect 3 originally forcing players to play multiplayer to get certain endings was a mistake that should have never happened in the first place.
That's weird. Because there's only like 3 endings. What possible, like what possible impact? That's what's confusing, I guess, about this. It's like, what impact could it possibly have had if there's only like, if there's such a, those endings are not all that different.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Well, Mass Effect Legendary Edition is out. I'm not going to play it. I actually would be more likely to go. I played, as we know, if you listen to Knockback, I played Mass Effect again last year. I'll probably go back to PS3 and play the other two at some point just because, well, you know why. Before I was a podcaster and general malcontent, I came up through the gaming industry as a writer, and I'm pretty damn good at it. But when it comes to artistic endeavors, well, let's just say I'm deficient and leave it there. You know what? Let's not leave it there. I have no talent at all with all things visual, which is why I'm so intrigued by Canva. Canva is a one-stop online design studio, and by going to canva.me/sacred, that's canva.me/SACRED, you can find everything you need to design like a pro, especially when it comes to the entirety of their design suite under the fitting name Canva Pro. Usually, I have to rely on Dustin or Ben to worry about visuals when it comes to Last Stand Media, but in a bind, I can actually do a whole lot without their artistic eyes. That's because Canva Pro has plenty of templates, tools, and options to help you build better presentations, create more professional videos, share more useful social media posts, and more. Not to mention the typical print products you'd think of when it comes to design, posters, flyers, infographics, and so on. It's impressive how easy it is to find what you're looking for. The site is well organized and intuitive. Imagine promoting a local show with some handy flyers, or impressing your bosses with a next-gen presentation. It's all possible by way of Canva Pro. I was especially interested in their Instagram story templates, since my stories are usually poorly lit and unintentionally lo-fi videos of me talking about G.I. Joes and monetary inflation. Anyway, the point is, if Canva Pro can help me, it can help you too. It's great for novices, intermediates, and experts alike. And with more than 75 million photos, videos, audio clips, motion graphics, and more, Canva Pro is also a repository of great utility. So give it a try for yourself. To design like a pro with Canva Pro, go to canva.me/sacred to get a free 45-day extended trial of the service. That's it, there's no catch. Try Canva Pro for 45 days by going to canva.me/sacred. Design like a pro at canva.me/sacred. Okay. At this point, I want to touch on a very sensitive subject before we move on. I feel like this subject needs to be touched on, not because I want to talk about it on the show, but because I feel like it's disingenuous to dodge it because it is an industry story. Might not be a comfortable one to talk about, but it is a political story. And I want to respect what we've been trying to do on the show, and we're going to continue to do, by keeping politics only in the show when it makes sense per our industry and per the products. Otherwise, we have, and not even otherwise, we just have no litmus test. We make no proclamations as a company and any of that. But because this is a very sensitive issue, which is about Palestine and Israel, and a lot of people don't want to hear about this, I'm going to totally respect your right to skip that while still remaining true to the core mission of the show. So what we're going to do is Dustin is going to clue in at some point in the coming moments after this with just an insertion of a timestamp that will be approximate, because we have like dynamic ads and stuff, but it'll be an approximate way in which you can skip forward to that time to skip this entire conversation and get right into what we're playing. But I feel like it would be disingenuous for us to skip this,
right,
and not talk about it. So, Dustin, at this point, with your sultry voice, you will come in and you will say a timestamp that people will then skip to if they want to.
1:14:14.
Okay, there we go. Very well done. All right, so we have a lot of people writing into us about this on Patreon, but I'm going to encapsulate it with a letter from Dennis Johnson, who wrote in and said, "Sup, fellas. Well, politics met games in a big way over at IGN this week. What happened to your old stomping grounds?" He's talking about me, of course. "And could this have been avoided? Where does the editorial staff go from here in regards to their treatment of issues that reach far beyond their typical entertainment coverage?" I feel like this was the question we got that was frankly briefest and also least partisan. I think we all have probably different opinions on what's going on over there. We can get into that if it's important, but I don't know that it's important in a major way. I'm kind of just curious, and Chris, we'll start with you. I wonder, like, what do you think about, what do you think about this whole situation? You can really tackle it however you want. What do you think about the insertion of websites like IGN into humanitarian crises, basically, in which, in my opinion, I think it's pretty clear, it's not like a tsunami or an act of God, a hurricane, a typhoon. It's a conflict with two sides that have valid claims, and so to, in my opinion, and so to insert your website into the fray and pretend that it's just another humanitarian drive like we used to do for Haiti or Indonesia when I was at IGN, I think is completely disingenuous and is designed first and foremost to inject personal staff politics at the fore, and secondarily to also raise money for good causes. I would never deny that. But I think it goes in that order. I'm curious what you think about what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like things in general are different now. Not necessarily in a better or worse way. I just think the way that the internet and the way that social media has connected all of us has made the world a lot smaller, has made things that were previously a lot more ignorable, a lot less ignorable. And I think, with contentious situations like this where there are people, getting hurt and, I don't know if it's not that I consider it like a tsunami or anything like that, but there is a crisis going on over there. It's something that I would equate to just like a really slow boil of a population in what is widely considered to be an open air prison. And it's the same thing with like the Uyghurs, like where like I had no idea that was even happening in China until I heard about it from probably an entertainment outlet, like genuinely, sincerely. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of crazy. And IGN might be this place that you go to for video game news and all this stuff, but they're also like the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, on this because I don't know the metrics of all these sites, but they're the biggest site in that sphere.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
That commands a lot of power to affect change in a perceptively positive way. And I don't necessarily think it's wrong of the staff of a site with as much reach as IGN to see something that they might object to and, maybe say, hey, you know what? Here is a place that you can go to direct aid for, people in a really horrible situation. I'm not intrinsically opposed to that. So I didn't have a problem with them like putting the donation thing up there or like putting the article out. I thought it was a bit of an overreach of the ownership to kind of take that down and kind of, because the way that I felt about it, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
No, please.
It's a complicated thing.
Please, no, please.
But the way that I felt about it is that they're going to take down the opinions of the editorial staff, completely remove it, then put up this kind of corporate thing completely anonymously, because these aren't people that have like their face on the site. These aren't people that have their names really attached to what goes on the site. They're basically putting this opinion out there to devalue the other opinion, and then they're going to have the staff kind of deal with that. It's kind of like, hey, I have my opinion, I'm going to put it in front, and then I'm going to slink away. I'm going to slink away. My face isn't attached to this. I'm going to slink back into the shadows and then have the staff that clearly disagrees with it have to deal with the repercussions of having posted something that they clearly don't agree with. That was weird to me. Obviously, they own the company. They have the right to do whatever, but it felt a bit weird to me for them to do that.
Sure.
I'm
I
sorry
don't
if I'm rambling again.
No, you're not rambling at all. Please. I mean, this is a podcast. We're designed to all talk. I ramble all the time. But yes, I do feel like I had never seen. So let me back up. When I worked at IGN, I left at the end of 2014. J2, which still owns IGN, I think bought the company from Fox actually we went independent first, and then they bought the company from the investors in 2012. Mm-hmm. And they were actually a pretty stabilizing force at IGN. As far as I understand, there have been no layoffs since J2 bought IGN, which is incredible because I worked there and there were layoffs every year. I mean, it was incredible. And then we would just hire and have a bigger staff. I never really even understood what was going on, but neither did Fox. I once saw Rupert Murdoch walk through the building with like his entourage of like literally through editorial with like his entourage of like 20 people. And he's probably like, what the fuck is this this piece of shit under my shoe that I own. So I totally was a little perplexed by that as well. But it goes to show you that you can't make a proclamation quite like this, and we'll get more into what they specifically said. That's because that's my problem with it personally, is not helping and bringing attention to a humanitarian cause. I said on Jaffe's show when I did his live stream that you're right. Gaza is one of the worst places in the world. It's horrible. 25% of the population there are children. It's not good.
I think it's over 30. I think. Actually.
Oh, over 30%.
Or something. I could be wrong. Actually,
you might be right. So maybe close to a third. It's an incredibly sad situation. It's tragic what's going on the West Bank too, but much better there generally, and not really super involved in the situation. But Dustin, what do you make of what's happening? I mean, what do you have? You don't have to say anything. I actually emailed you. I never do this. I emailed you guys to let you know we were going to talk about this ahead of time, as opposed to just putting it in the document, just to make sure everyone was prepared, or to say if you had a problem. So, by the way, no one has to say anything. But I feel like it would just be disingenuous for us to pretend that this didn't happen. Much like Chris was saying, J2 put the letter out and then pretended that nothing happened.
Sure. So, specifically about the IGN aspect of it, and Colin, I'm going to have to ask you a few things to confirm what I'm thinking, because I'm trying to remember the original article, right?
Yeah. I have it up right now.
Okay.
Do you want me to? I'll put it. I have a web archive of it. Do you want it?
Oh, that'd be perfect. But I mean, I guess you can just confirm it. Beyond the asking of humanitarian donations, there was a clear side, a political slant to it, right?
100%.
Right. So,
do you want me to read what it says? Do you want me to read what it says? It's not very long. I can tell you what it says. Yeah. This is IGN's post on May 14th. Quote, Palestinian civilians are currently suffering in great numbers in Jerusalem, Gaza, and the West Bank due to Israeli forces. The New York Times reported that most of the deaths so far have occurred in Gaza. We want to highlight the humanitarian crisis in Palestine because while there has been fighting in the region for decades, recent escalations have seen a catastrophic loss of Palestinian lives. Below are charities and organizations on the ground in those areas where you can donate funds to help those most in need. We will continue to update this article with ways you can help. End quote. That's all it says. Okay. So there you go. I think that that's a political statement.
Yeah.
Some people can disagree, but I think that's a clear political statement.
It's a light. It's not like super direct, but it's definitely there.
It's direct if you know what's going on there. And I'm not trying to be an asshole, but knowing the way people mix the words up with Palestinian and Israel, depending on the side and quotes you are on and the way you use words, that's kind of the frustrating thing to me is I think it's much more overt than maybe a lot of people realize because, no offense, a lot of people don't pay attention to this. It's very complicated and not really worthwhile to pay attention to if you're not involved in it. You know, why would you? So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt us.
So here's kind of what I was thinking about it. And it's funny because the way I was connecting the dots was through a sort of unrelated conversation that I heard between you and Ryan on Sacred Symbols Plus. And that was you were talking about how if you wrote a review and that a quote from that review was on a commercial, it's not attributed to Colin Moriarty. It's attributed to
and I was talking about that because that used to annoy me because I used to see my quotes on commercials and I used to be really mad that it wasn't my name.
Right.
Yeah.
So IGN, especially in this article, made, IGN US specifically, the San Francisco office, we can assume, made this post speaking on behalf of IGN as a brand. And IGN is a global brand. And we've talked about there's the Israeli version of IGN, which is, what's the word I'm
It's
looking
licensed.
for?
That's
Licensed.
a licensee.
But still, that's something important and to consider. So I can understand the owners of the brand not liking this article and maybe wanting some changes. Now, something important is that I don't think that the way they went about those changes and handling this whole situation was appropriate. Right? Like they were real sneaky about it. Like 4 a.m. Was it like in the middle of the night, that weird thing?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, as I understand it. Yeah.
And they posted in a way that made it look like it was on behalf of the IGN staff. That's not okay either. So I'm seeing like faults on both sides of this, specifically when we're talking about this exact situation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way that I think about things, but I don't know if it's overtly. I think that the issue that a lot of people have is it's too, and this is just a general problem online and just in culture and society that I've noticed is just that there's a very much like pro this thing is anti this thing, right? You can't like if you donate to a charity that is meant to help children in the Gaza Strip not die or like get medical attention, then that is somehow anti-Israeli. But it's like the Israeli people and the Israeli government are not the same thing in the same way that Palestinians and Hamas are not the same thing. These are just separate entities. And I think it's reasonable. And I would even argue in some ways completely apolitical to see like, hey, children are being hurt. Let's put some money over here. It's not that Israel isn't suffering in some way either. There are obviously casualties on both sides. Obviously, I think the casualties skew heavily in one direction. But there are still casualties nonetheless. But the difference is our tax money goes over there. Like, we don't have to raise money for Israel because they have that money. And they're kind of basically entitled to it every year. And they have been for, like, ages. So I think that's really the difference here is that you're just seeing, like, yeah, there's a conflict there, but there's one side that is very clearly, like, in my mind, it seems very much like they're just being kind of pushed and, like, evicted and boxed into a corner. And, yeah, obviously, when people are boxed into a corner, they're going to resort to things that are not ideal. And I don't know if you can necessarily blame, or not necessarily blame, maybe that's the wrong thing, but it shouldn't be it should be anticipated that this kind of reaction would happen given the way that Israel's government has handled the situation in the West Bank and in Gaza. I'm not an expert, obviously, on this stuff. I dabble in this stuff every now and again, but, you know, I just want to be clear, you know, understanding the plight of the Palestinian people, especially like the children and the innocent civilians over there who, like a lot of Israeli government officials have said, there are no innocents in the Gaza Strip, like just straight up. Like there are no innocent people. The only innocent people in Gaza are our soldiers. Like they've said this. And this is not like just random Israelis. This is people in you know, in governmental power. So I just think the greater context is a lot more complicated. And I don't think charity should be political, in my opinion. But, you know, that's just me as the resident lefty of the of the show.
No, I think much like tithing at your church, I feel like giving money shouldn't never really be made to be a show anyway. So I think
that's fair.
I think that's why it's great to bring. I think what you said is very poignant. I think that you're absolutely right. Suffering is happening much more on one side. One side is much more organized. Obviously, I think actually Israel is considered one of the greatest militaries in the world. So the least of their concerns is they're created and able to withstand a multi-country invasion of their land, which they've done. So this is not a huge problem for them, especially with the Iron Dome and all of that. But so I actually agree with everything you said, Chris. I agree. I agree with everything you said pretty much. Palestine needs much more help. The Palestinian territories need much more help. Israel doesn't need this money. But I think my issue is encapsulated best in a letter from the audience, or a letter to the audience from a website called Fanbyte.
Oof. This is a whole different thing to me.
So this, I think, better encapsulates why I have an issue that goes above and beyond what you said. Because if it was presented in such a way where, like, listen, this is a humanitarian crisis, blah, 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 but you clearly can tell, like, IGN was kind of trying to subtly poke at things, in my opinion, right? Due to Israeli forces. It's not a needed part of the sentence, right? If you're really trying to just raise money for children and not make a political statement, but I think this is a much more overt political statement from Fanbyte. Quote, "We, the editorial staff of Fanbyte.com, stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine against apartheid, genocide, and oppression." End quote. I mean, they say more than that, but that's all you need to hear. This is fanatical language and is well outside the mainstream of any Western political thought in any government. You can count the amount of people in the U.S. House of Representatives on two hands that would ever use any of that language, out of 435 of them. I don't think almost any senator would say that. Certainly the president and the vice president of the United States would not call Israel an apartheid country and a genocidal country. And I find, and this is where the rubber hits the road for me with some of this, because I agree with what Chris is saying. Presented in an apolitical manner, let's raise all the money we can for these children. Let's raise for vetted, like the Palestine Project, I think, is one of them, and Doctors Without Borders and all that's totally great. But you're calling a country partially founded by the survivors of the Holocaust and their ancestors genocidal and in the creation of an apartheid state. And anyone who knows anything about this history will know that in 1948, the Israelis agreed to partition that land, including making Jerusalem an international city in which it would have no say. And the reason that Palestine has gotten smaller and smaller is because of the incursions across these partition lines as things have gotten worse and worse. And so my personal hope is that the two sides can learn to live in harmony. The Palestinians especially can gain self-determination and economic vibrance, of which they have no jobs, they have no money. It's a horrible situation right now. So I think what Chris is saying is totally correct. But Chris, would you agree with me that language about Israel, I mean, I know Israelis. I grew up on Long Island, first of all. 1 in 5 people on Long Island is Jewish.
Yeah.
That's 10 times higher than the national average, right? So we used to get Jewish holidays off, and I've been to all sorts, so I'm exposed to a little bit more of Zionism. I'm certainly much more, I always said I'm an honorary Jew. I mean, I've said that many times on the show, I think. So obviously I have a bias, but I still think that it's objectively ridiculous to call what's happening over there genocide and ethnic cleansing and all of these kinds of things, these very loaded terms that to me remind me a lot of the loaded terms like Nazism and fascism, socialism, communism, words that really have no meaning anymore. And I'm concerned about that because I think that if you're going to get involved in a situation and in a humanitarian crisis like this, you either need to be apolitical or be fair. Why is this happening? I'm not saying that it's good.
Yeah.
But why? It's because these letters make it seem like Israel is just like just 19th century colonial style, just rip roaring all over the place, all over Judea, and it's not. I'm sorry to interrupt. One more thing. I am of the belief that if Hamas stopped shooting rockets, there would be peace. That is true, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know if I would use those words specifically, but I do feel. And this is where it's important to keep in mind Israelis and the government are different things. In the same way that the government here is not famously not the people. Like most, like there's so many really, really popular policies that the overwhelming majority of the country supports that like nobody in representative electoral in the representative electorate even remotely talks about. The left-leaning president that just won said, he would veto Medicare for all if it came to his desk, even though it's like, okay, well.
He also said Israel has a right to defend itself, which is
so
and that's why I was saying it's so far outside of the mainstream what I feel like is being said.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I think the government of Israel does skirt this weird kind of line where it's like they have this population that they won't let leave, that they restrict access to aid, they restrict access to, basic necessities. They can't leave, they can't come in, and then they're like showered with missiles, sometimes with reason, sometimes I would argue without. And you have people again in government like saying like really kind of fanatical shit. Like I don't think it's all that much of a stretch to say that there are people in Israeli power who are ironically minded in the sense that they really, like I've seen, the Palestinians are beasts. Like, it's like, what? Just like,
that's unacceptable.
It's crazy. Like, and it's not, again, this isn't to boil everything down to like good, bad. But like, I think there's a pretty clear situation over there where you have a group of people who is in a dire situation who have in desperation turned to a government in the form of Hamas. Are they really government? I don't know. Well, how would you describe even that? Like what,
Hamas?
Yeah, like
they were elected. Yeah, America sees them has officially classified them as a terrorist organization, but they have been elected.
Yeah. Yes. They were elected, and what would bring a people to elect some like an organization like that? And the reality is, the feeling that they're being just treated wildly unfairly, and I don't know. It's really hard because I feel like people are just gonna be like, "Oh, you're justifying terrorism or whatever," but it's like
I don't think anyone feels that. You have to understand. We said this on Twitter. Actually, we have to have a room on our show to speak, right, about and not agree and maybe trip over our words or make some mistakes. People have to understand the intent of these conversations is not, at least from my opinion, I'm sure for Chris too, it's not in and of itself to make political proclamations because we are trying to make an apolitical or at least neutral sort of Switzerland-like company where everyone feels welcome, but rather that we still have to have these kinds of conversations, I think. It's just
right.
It's just the way it goes.
I don't know. Yeah, my feelings are complicated on it. I just feel like...
it's a complicated issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems perfectly normal to me.
Yeah. I wouldn't use genocide lightly, but I do think what's happening there is at least some form of apartheid. Like I'm not gonna mince words. I really do think, and it's again, what makes it so shocking is that it is Israel. That's what's so like I would agree. Like it's like, wow, what do you think? Like the people who survived the Holocaust are doing this, but it's like that's what's so confusing about it is like seeing these words from like people in power over there. It's just like that is so shockingly emblematic of the exact reason that you wanted to have this land in the first place. It's kind of crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think for a lot, and we can wrap this
has
up.
nothing to do with the people over there. These
I know.
Israeli people. I know many people who are great.
It's interesting because the whole act of Zionism goes so far beyond what even happened in the Holocaust, that because it's so much older, that I think a lot of people there have just maybe even lost sight of that entire thing. Because if you go back to Theodore Herzl and like this entire Zionist movement in the 19th century to go back home, basically, it is a religious drive to reclaim what they think is already there. So it's very complicated. It isn't, but I resent the use of the term. Like, I guess what I wanted to say is that I obviously stand with the Palestinians. I've actually heard from a lot of Muslim listeners. We have a lot of Arab listeners. As we know, we hear from them pretty often on the show, and a lot of them have thanked me for speaking what they feel is reasonable, as a lot of them are interested in dealing in peace with the Israelis. But I've also heard a lot from our Israeli listeners who very much appreciate me speaking up, because I know that I think one of them was like, it's kind of rough to be in like, a bomb shelter and see a Palestinian flag on IGN on their header as I'm like getting my shit bombed. And it's worth noting that the death is much more on one side than the other, no doubt. But Israelis have also died. And if it wasn't for the Iron Dome, they've launched thousands of missiles, in which almost all of them have been intercepted. Imagine the death and destruction if it was much more level and even. But it is not. And I'm thankful that it's not, because that would just make the situation even worse. So my hope is that everyone can find a peaceful solution to this and remain apolitical. But what I thought was ironic about the Fanbyte situation, as I think Dustin knows and Chris certainly knows, is Fanbyte's owned by Tencent. Tencent is an organ of China. I mean, it's a Chinese mega corporation that has serious CCP connections and is widely looked at as one of the reasons why ways it steals intellectual property and does fucked up shit on the internet and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked them. I was like, if you are going to stand up, I mean, their letter says, and this is where I'm getting into the nugget of it. I'm sorry,
totally
that we're going on about this. That's exactly right, because we, the editorial staff of fanbyte.com, stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine against apartheid, genocide, and oppression. I want to see that statement about the Uyghurs.
Right, exactly.
If I see that statement and this on Fanbyte about the Uyghur concentration camps in Western China, then I will throw away this entire notion I have that these companies are controlled in some way by Chinese communist money. But you won't see that. And people like Imran, what is his last name, Dustin?
Oh, I don't know.
Imran.
I don't know.
The writer over there at Fanbyte. I was going to say Gamebyte. Fanbyte. When I asked him, all he could do is make fun of and deflect because he cannot answer the question, right? You're not going to see that. They're not interested in it because it's not a loud political statement. Of course, what's happening there is, in some ways, if you want to measure things on historical bases, worse. But you will never see that. And this is why I say on our show, it is and I said this to Jaffe too, and he totally agreed, and I know you guys agree. I don't wade into these rivers as a consumer or as a creator, because it is impossible to live a 21st century modern moral life when you're buying things from China and when you have money coming in from all different places. But I'm not the one making these statements to begin with. So when people come to me and say, you say you don't want politics in games, I'm like, no, I never said that. That's quite the opposite of what I said, actually.
Yeah.
I just want things to be fairly represented. And if you're going to come out as a Tencent-owned company against oppression, genocide, and apartheid, let's see what you do in China. That I think that's a whole nother through line. So Chris and I have been talking for a long time. Chris, go on, please.
No, I will say that is frustrating. The hypocrisy on that front is annoying. I guess like the best thing you could say about it is at least they're talking about something and just not completely shutting the door on everything. But at the same time, it is just really. Why can't you? Like, why can't you just like it would be a huge display of balls, to be like, hey, you know what? What's happening in China is really messed up, even though you're owned by Tencent, and it's probably gonna ruin everything. That'd be massive respect from me, from whoever would write that at like that site that I've never heard of.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is no one reads the site. It's not consequential, but it's just kind of an anecdotal piece of the puzzle, I think, about the mainstream kind of thought processes. And why I think what I wanted to say most of all, and we'll kick it over to Dustin because he's just been sitting there. I'm sorry, Dustin, we've just been talking. But I will say that I just want, when you see groupthink to this, and I'm not saying what Chris is saying groupthink, but what I'm saying is that the overuse of words and kind of slanted coverage, and it's pretty obvious, and everything's going in one way. And when someone's like me or someone else says something different, and everyone gets really mad, I think you should ask yourselves why. I think that it's okay to say like, well, why is this prevailing wisdom? Sometimes it's the prevailing wisdom because people are scared to say otherwise. And so I just wanted to kind of level the playing field. And I feel like at least starting the conversation, I was able to do that. And again, we do not make political proclamations on this show. As a show, we will not sponsor organizations or political parties or endorse anything. We will not do that on the show, but we will have our own individual standards. And I texted Chris and then or emailed him, and then I put it out in public. Like, we've lost patrons for talking about this on both sides. Chris, based on our exit surveys, we know that.
Yeah.
But that's too bad. Like, we're going to continue to say what we need to say regardless. So, Dustin, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, the fan bite thing is just hilarious to me. That's like one of the, I don't know. Like you said, there's some people that were accusing you of the, what is it called? What if?
Oh, whataboutism.
Whataboutism.
That's just people use that terminology when they don't like being called hypocrites.
Right.
That's my experience.
Right. And I can understand certain situations where that might apply to. But again, it's like you said, it's this idea of like you waded into this water, you're in it. So yeah, you're going to be judged for things like this. Like, that makes sense to me.
Indeed.
I don't know. The only thing I want to say is that, I mean, throughout this conversation, people may have picked up on the fact that I've not made a clear stance on pro or against anyone or whatever. And it's not because I'm a centrist in any way, but it's just because I feel like it's important for people to be like, you don't instantly have to take a stance on something you don't fully understand. And I'm not saying that either Chris or Colin have made a stance about something they don't understand. I'm talking about myself. Like, I don't know a lot about this conflict. And what's difficult for me is that I see the destruction. I see the children who have died on Twitter, and I think how horrible, right? And that sucks. And at the same time, you see the information about like the Israeli Defense Force saying like, look, we warned everybody. We called everybody. We sent the bombs that aren't really bombs that just like land on the ceiling as a warning. We attacked this building because there were this level of intel, or like they use that to cover. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. But if anything in the last 4 years has shown me is that you cannot believe everything the moment that it is published. And so, yeah, I'm a little hesitant to make a stance on anything. And maybe that might come from some people as a position of privilege, like, oh, Dustin could just live in Western PA and not have an opinion about these atrocities or anything. It's like how many things do we have to make a stance on? Is everyone supposed to bear the problems of the world in their mind? Like, I just don't, I will never subscribe to that. I will always try to be more concerned about the problems that are here and now that face me and my community around me. And again, if you want to be passionate about that, that's fine. And to be clear, I'm not addressing Colin and Chris right now because I feel like it sounds like I'm being very anti what they said.
I don't take it that way at all.
I just know that, some people might be like, well, Dustin's not really saying anything. Is he afraid to say what he feels in front of Colin and Chris? And
it makes sense to be afraid to say something. Look at the way they treat people that say, look at the way they treat me. When you really go look at what I say, and then you see the way that people talk about what I say, it's like, no wonder no one wants to say anything, but I'm kind of immune, so it doesn't matter anymore. So I say what I need to say. So I think it's important. What you say is very important, very good advice, Dustin, to never, to take time if you need to.
Yeah. No one should be forced into having an opinion about something that they haven't really formulated already. Like, you shouldn't just like hear about something immediately and just be like, be expected to take a stance the day of, I don't know. It also doesn't make sense that people would assume that you would be afraid because me and Colin are literally here.
Well,
taking a relatively opposing, arguments.
I think that, just to conclude my thought is that there's a troubling thing that not only is it don't speak against the narrative, but not saying anything against the narrative is just as bad to some people. And I simply will not go along with that because you don't need to have an opinion about everything.
No. No one should hold a gun to your head to say or feel anything. That's not what we're going to do here. And yeah, I just wanted to get that out there about, first of all, acknowledge this is a big event in the industry, but also kind of get our opinions out there. Chris and I obviously feel somewhat diametrically opposed about this. But I think we all agree, like, that regardless of if you know the ins and outs of it or not, or care about any of this, I think we can all agree that these two sides need to learn to live together. And my hope, personally, if people are curious, is that the two sides go back to something like the 1948 partition, which will expand Gaza and expand the West Bank and make Jerusalem an international city, and maybe some sort of causeway between these two things, so that you can create an economically vibrant country that lives side by side with its neighbor. And that is, at the end of the day, the only option. And there is no other option. One state solution, some people believe in, but that's not going to happen. Israel kind of has a one state solution because 1/5 of its population is Arab and almost half of its population is secular. So that's another reason why I think the attacks on it are a little unfair. But it's like Chris said, Israel's government and its people are two different things, although it's easy to mix it up sometimes because, of course, every Israeli citizen serves. And I knew people in college that served. So women.
Yeah, and it's the same thing over in, or not exactly the same thing over in Palestine, but like because Hamas is so integrated into that society, like everything is like, even just something that's just a charity is just like they're always like 1 or 2 degrees of separation from. So it's easy to just kind of like dismiss it. Oh, it's Hamas. Everything is like, and it's like,
right.
Listen, there are people are people, you know, and
I agree. Let's stop.
It's frustrating.
Let's hopefully violence everywhere can end. As a pacifist, it's easy for me to say that, but I believe that violence has a certain place in society. I'm not a Quaker, but in terms of, and I believe in self-defense and all of those things, but I just feel like hopefully these things can solve themselves. These issues are obviously always going to be present because we have gamers, you know, as ironic as it sounds, we do have gamers on these sides of these conflicts, just like we had them in Ukraine and just like we have them in other places in Kashmir. So it's a problem. It's something that we'll continue to acknowledge, but all people are welcome here in our community. And we don't even if you feel vociferously in one direction or the other, we feel like you're welcome here, as long as you're not like a hateful person or anything like that. So thank you so much for all of you who did write in. We know that you wanted to cover some of that. And thank you guys for your honest input. I think I especially like what Dustin said at the end there, which was just like, take your time and learn. It's a very complicated issue. And also acknowledge your biases. I don't think that you'll ever be able to remove my bias for Jewish people, just generally. Like, it's just something I grew up with. But it can't and shouldn't come off as anything other than, or anything that suggests that the other side doesn't deserve their own equal rights, self-determination, happiness, and all of that. So we'll wish everyone the very best. And that's it. The summer months are upon us, but perhaps your mood is still feeling a little bit gloomy, perhaps left over from the fall and winter, but more likely than not a remnant of some trying times we all shared recently. However, if you're feeling mentally unwell lately for any reason and you're looking to try and right the ship, you may be interested in therapy from BetterHelp. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. Better yet, BetterHelp's therapists can help you with all sorts of challenges, motivational issues, anxiety and depression, insecurity at work or in relationships, a bad temper. BetterHelp's offerings run the gamut because in reality, there's a whole lot to cover when it comes to the totality of mental wellness. These are normal human struggles, and there's nothing wrong with seeking help. Quite the contrary. And since BetterHelp is both cheaper than in-person therapy and incredibly reactive, you can begin seeing someone in under 48 hours. There's no better time to give therapy a try than right this minute. So there's good news. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Sacred Symbols listeners can get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. Give online therapy a try and be open-minded to the possibility that things can truly be better. Take the first step by going to betterhelp.com/symbols for 10% off your first month of sessions. Again, that's betterhelp.com/symbols. BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. All right. Let's get into what we're playing. Now, I've never seen this before. I tweeted this out that we all are playing the same games. So instead of going person by person, we might as well go game by game. We're all playing Resident Evil 8 and Returnal. I actually want to go in opposite in the opposite order and go to Returnal first, if we might. Chris, what's your experience with this game since we last talked?
I still like it a lot. I still have the same problems with it. I cannot get past this third biome. I don't know what's wrong with me. I felt pretty competent. And in fairness, I haven't put like too much time into it since we last talked about it. I haven't been like, I haven't put. I think I maybe put like 4 more hours into it. So it's not like a huge amount of time. But I'm just getting my ass torn asunder in this third biome, like ravaged. Like I don't know what it is. These rocket things, the enemies, they just I don't know.
Horrible.
Like I don't know what I'm doing. My brain can't process. Like maybe I can't track the projectiles or something, and I just feel like things explode on me, and then I lose everything, and then I get to like some crawling guy that explodes, and I'm like, all right, well, I don't.
Yeah, there's like a lot of suicide bomb type characters.
Yeah, it's like a huge jump in difficulty, I feel, and maybe I'm just getting worse at video games. That's also possible because I feel like I'm pretty good at these types of games. Not necessarily like the house mark kind of like dodging in between like projectile stuff, but like this is a very Doom Eternal kind of game. Very push forward oriented combat. Very like fight, and like move on from arena to arena. It's like this is exactly my jam, and I don't know what the hell it is about this third biome, but I just cannot crack it. I've been trying.
Yeah. So you haven't gotten to the boss in the third biome yet?
No, I keep.
Okay, I got to that's as far as I got was the boss in the third biome. That was the last time I played it, and it's very last boss-esque. It's which I was surprised by. I was like, what the hell is this? But and I was actually really frustrated because I was having a great run. I had a great weapon. I had a ton of health packs. I had an astronaut, and I still lost. I was like, I can't fucking. And it was like 4 hours of my life. I can't believe this. And that's the frustrating thing about it for me is just the time sink. But Dustin, what are you thinking?
Well, you brought up a very good point, Colin, and that is you were having a really good run, and it felt very worthwhile, and you were having a great time until you died. And then, how did the runs feel after that? The runs where you never felt like you got a good weapon, or the runs where it just felt like you were getting destroyed, or whatever. It's like
I've restarted runs myself, like because I'm like, this isn't going right.
Colin, what'd you say on Twitter the other day about this game? Because I agreed with it. This is going to turn into like the circle jerk segment of Returnal, because we all, I think, are feeling the exact same thing about this game. Because I think what you said, that like the things you don't like about it, you continue to like less, and the things you like, you're liking more. Right?
Yeah, there's nothing about my initial assessment of that game that is incorrect. That's what's weird about it. Everything I like. Everything I don't like, I don't like. Like that calculus hasn't changed. The scale has not moved. It's just I got to admit there's something about this game. There definitely is something about it. Dustin, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I interrupted.
No,
you.
I totally agree. The thing about it is, I think I'm just getting really mad about the RNG and the roguelike aspect of it. Because, and I don't want to repeat ourselves, but I think it's totally fair to compare this game to Hades, which was the last big roguelike game. And every time I finished a run on Hades, it's like you instantly want to jump back in. And I think this is something that Chris kind of touched on, is that this game does not do that. This game, because of the experience I've had with really what feels like lopsided runs, is when I like, so for example, I got to third biome, I was on the last health bar of that boss, and then I died. And I have played 2 times since then, and I haven't even gotten to the boss. I'm like, what is happening? Is it possible that there's a range of variability in my skill depending on the sitting? Sure. It's very possible. But there's also a strong range of pickups. And like, dude, okay, here's a very specific example of something I've learned that I really don't like about this game. I don't like the shotgun. I know that some people really like it.
I was about to. I like if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up. That weapon is so bad that when I get it, I restart it instantly.
Well, like, what are you supposed to do against the flying enemies with the shotgun? Just like spam it over and over?
It's
like,
so shit.
I don't get it. But here's the problem: is that there's
Yeah, it's
other...
weird because the game makes you want to keep range. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
on.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. So the game doesn't encourage you to use a weapon like that, at least to me. And it's weird because my Twitch chat will be like, "I love the shotgun," which is fine. They may feel that way. I said that in a
Everyone in
little
the
bit of
Twitch
a
chat
mocking
has a
way.
lot. They have a lot of things to say in the Twitch chat, don't they?
Yeah,
They
they're all
do.
wrong.
Oh, they do. And so there's other, like, I got this weird lobber weapon. I can't remember
Oh,
what
yeah.
it's called.
Yeah,
I
no,
never
don't
want to
use
use that. But here's
No,
the
me
thing. Since I picked it up, it is now in the weapon pool. So the carbine, which is my like second favorite, I really like the Hollow Seeker as well.
Me too. That's like the
awesome.
submachine gun is definitely my favorite as well. Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time I discover a new weapon, it is less likely that I'm going to get those guns.
Right. It's the same thing when you spend ether at that thing in the beginning to start unlocking more items. It seems to me like, because people are like, you got to spend your ether. I'm afraid of spending my ether, and then I maxed out at 30, and so I started spending it. But I'm like, I'm getting things that I don't want, and now they're messing with the RNG even more. Mm-hmm. There's something fundamentally broken about this game. Like I don't mean that in an almost insulting way. Like you can't progress. It's just, when we read the news item about this game later, we'll get more into it, but they had an opportunity, it sounds like, to do something else with this game, and they chose this direction. And I'm a little surprised by it. It's so fun to play.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to play. And the fucking controller, like the way it uses the DualSense is amazing. It's an amazing next generation must experience if it's on PS Plus at some point, if you don't want to buy it or whatever. You just have to feel what the controller does and how it makes noises and very subtle movements. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of really cool stuff this game does, but it's clear it's not selling well, and it's strange. It's what I said to Jaffe, which was, I find it somewhat unusual that Sony's first two major pushes for exclusive games on their platform are two very difficult games. I was saying that only 40% of players get to the third biome. That's not good. I mean, you might think like, well, we made a really hard game, but it's actually not good. 60% of players get past the first biome. You're losing tons of people. It's not good. So I'm actually interested in the overall experience of many people that are playing this game, because it seems to have a very loud, vocal, and somewhat obnoxious fan base online when you speak about it. And I feel like it has a lot of detractors that are afraid of saying something, because clearly the trophies speak pretty loudly. That's the best thing about the trophy percentages when they put that in, was that it just let everyone know exactly what was happening.
Yeah. It's. I think I like it more than you guys do, but like
Yeah.
I still. Yeah. It's. When I die, I'm just like, I'm never really encouraged to do it again. Like when I die, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I'm the
play
same way.
Resident
One
Evil.
run a night. Like that's all I can have time for, and that's all I have the patience for, because I do like this. When you die and you see Selena again, it's like immediate, and you like the thing's crashing again. I'm like, oh, it does elicit this very unique emotion of frustration, which is cool,
Yeah.
because games frustrate you, but not in this way.
Yeah,
Because
it's
you unlock
deliberate.
like there's so much. The world is so cool. Like you want to see more. You want to know more. You want to see it all. And you get little things too, like when you get the melee weapon and the hook shot and all that, where the game opens up to you. I think the melee weapon is awesome. I'm using that thing like left, right, and center. But once you get to the third biome, it's not very useful anymore. So, or at least not at that point.
Yeah, no, because everybody explodes on you. But yeah, I don't know. I said I was like, I'm gonna try and finish this before I start Resident Evil, but I was just like, I fucking can't. Like, and honestly, like, I don't know if it's really based on like the story's not really grabbing me personally. Like, I just don't really care about what the hell's going on. Like, it's interesting and it's kind of neat, but like every time I'm sent into that house, I'm just like, all right, it's time to walk very slowly with a miserably low FOV. And
It's like a Days Gone moment for you, at the flashback moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's picking flowers with my stupid wife again. I'm over it.
I agree with you where, so my whole thing was I needed to get past the first biome to have any respect for myself, because the game was beating my ass so badly where I'm like, this is unacceptable that I can't even get past the first stage. And finally got to the second biome, the red, really Mars-ish biome, which is cool as hell. And then I quickly got to this, like in the first or second run, I got to the boss there and realized that boss was pretty easy. So, and I died, but I was like, I can do this. So then I got like addicted to trying to beat that boss. And now I'm in the third biome and I'm like, I really think I'm at the point now where I'm like, I've proved my point. I've come further than more than half of players. that number is going to get lower and lower, by the way. And I also feel like I could also come back to this and keep doing it. And I just get this bug. I got to give the game credit. I don't think it's wonderful by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's fun to play, and I can't help but what it could have been is the most tantalizing thing of all. We'll talk about that in a little while. The other game is Resident Evil 8. Dustin, let's kick it over to you first. What's going on with you in this game?
I don't have a lot to say because I don't want to spoil anything. But
we'll do a spoiler cast in a couple weeks.
Right. What I do want to say is that before this game came out, the developers and reviewers were saying this game is not as scary as Resident Evil 7. Okay? And I agreed with them until what I'm going to call Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the Resident Evil, the Resident, in Act 2. And I'm having a hard time with this because I find it insanely disturbing.
Yeah.
I don't... So this... I'm not even going to say much other than a lot of it is in the dark. And it is very scary to me. Like, this moment in this game, and people who have played it know what I'm talking about. I can see Chris nodding along, very in agreement here. This part, dude, is like... This part alone is scarier than anything in Resident Evil 7 to me. Period.
Yeah.
Straight up. And I know it's not a long part. People are always like, oh, you're almost done. And I'm like, I know, but I feel like I can only play it for like 20 minutes. And I'm a bit of a wimp, I know. I will play horror games. Something about this, though, is extra. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Chris, what do you say?
No, I first of all, I started playing it. I didn't get to talk about it last week because I just wasn't playing it. I was still stuck on Returnal under the illusion that I could beat it. But, yeah, I really like it. Like, I like it way more than 7. Like, I enjoyed 7 from a, and I never finished it, but like from what I played, I was like, oh, this is like, it's neat. But it reminded me a lot of Outlast. It reminded me a lot of other, kind of independent first person horror games that I'd played. And like, yeah, it's it's fine, but it 7 has this consistent tone throughout the entirety of what I played, where it's almost kind of hard to up the ante from where you are in 7. Everything's kind of always gross and always kind of creepy to the point where I kind of got numb to it. Whereas in Resident Evil 8, I just feel like there's a lot of Resident Evil 4 energy in it. Just the Duke is awesome.
Yeah, he's great. I love that character.
Totally. I when I was playing, I was streaming, and he said, what are you buying? I was like, just something a friend of mine used to say.
Yes.
A big smile. I had to get stitches to fix my smile from tearing my face asunder, but because I just couldn't believe how fucking happy that made me. But it really feels like Resident Evil 4 and like kind of 2 remake and a little bit of like obviously 7 with perspective, like just sort of like mashed into like a really good, really delicious dish that I'm really enjoying so far. I got past the first act. I'm on the second act that very clearly, or I just finished the act that Dustin is on. And yeah, it's scarier than anything in Resident Evil 7 because I think the rest of the game is deliberately not as scary. It has a way to go that isn't just like consistently at the top level of scary, and it lets it like kind of like catch you off guard by how surprising it is. It reminds me a lot of actually, Colin, you might get a kick out of this. The BioShock Infinite, when the siren guy.
Oh, yeah, the Silent Boys of Silence or whatever they were called.
Yeah, the Boys of Silence. Like, it reminds me of that, where it's like the rest of this game is like it's creepy. It's got the tension in like with Mr. X and Lady Dimitrescu, and like it's kind of like horror-y, but it's never like terrifying. And then you get to this act where it's just I was screaming. I was like yelling at my game, like, get me out, because it was just that powerfully done, and I just got past that. I'm putting the game down just for a second to catch my, gather myself after that, because it was just so shockingly well done. But I'm really liking Resident Evil 8 so far. Like, this is on track to being possibly one of my favorites, like in the entire series. Honestly, I'm really enjoying it.
I'm glad to hear that. I think it's great too. About 75% of the way through the game, I guess. I'm playing it pretty slowly. I think I'm kind of coming towards the culmination. It's really good. I don't know how to encapsulate why it's so good. It's good for a lot of different reasons. I think it's kind of the perfect level of nonlinearity. There's quite a bit of exploration. So it does feel a little bit like Resident Evil 4, where because you're outside and then going back inside and then going back outside and so on. I really like that a lot. And I do feel like graphically the game is completely stunning. I can't believe how good it looks, and I just get caught up constantly looking at things. Dustin had brought this up last week. I just sometimes stop and I'm just like, I see this light bouncing off of a rock or this beautiful stone wall or just like really mundane shit. It reminds me of when I played Grand Theft Auto 4 for the first time, and I was looking at the asphalt, and it was not, for the first time, it was like asphalt that was not these like hex diagrams, but rather it looked like someone had actually drawn it. There's like little cracks and all this.
It's like cube mapped and all that.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was the first time I saw something else, and I feel like this is another one of those games where I've never seen anything look like this before. I think it's just as beautiful as anything I've ever seen in a video game. The scene I said last week where you walk around, I won't spoil what it is, but you walk around and see a house and a waterfall behind it. I actually shared a screenshot of that on my Twitter because I was like, holy shit. And just, again, this ominous castle background, just hardcore Castlevania vibes. It just draws this out of me. Everything about it makes me want to know if Konami's paying attention, not only for Silent Hill, of course, but also for what they can do with another one of their famous IPs. So we got a letter here from on Patreon from Ash Ellis, who said, "Men, would you rather spend a day in Resident Evil 7 setting or Resident Evil 8 setting with a view of getting out alive?" So you're put into Resident Evil 7, you're put into Resident Evil 8, but the idea is that you want to get out alive. Chris, which game would you have a better chance in?
Man, my gut says 8 because more of it is like, I don't know. I mean, big vampire women aside, I feel like there's just outdoors, like there's it's a little bit more adventurous. There's like characters that you actually like. The Duke is like just like a weirdly comforting presence.
Definitely.
But at the same time, I think of this Act 2 and I dread the thought of ever being in a situation even remotely similar to it. And I don't know. I guess overall, probably I might pick 7. I think I have a better chance in 7.
Might have a little, because it's in Louisiana, you might have like more of a home field advantage, at least being in the U.S. Maybe some sort. You can speak the language, although everyone seems to speak American English in this town in Eastern Europe anyway. I don't know why. But Dustin, what would your answer be? Would you rather survive? Could you survive more in 7 or 8?
I think I'm gonna have to. I mean, I'm at the same feeling as Chris in that if that situation happened to me, I would just say take me. Just end it. I don't need to survive. I'm just gonna die here. So
well, it's worth noting that much of the game is predicated on Ethan not being able to let go of what happened to him. So that is an interesting kind of building upon that for you, Dustin. Yeah. I think I would choose 8 just because 7 seems much more claustrophobic. I think it reminds me of the True Detective season 1, where they're in the bayou and they're going in all these weird, creepy places. Oh. Like, who the hell knows? I mean, it's very much like that. So who knows what the hell is around every corner there? I feel like in Eastern Europe, I feel like there's just more space. I can just run away. Just run away. You don't need to be here, Ethan. Get out of here. Climb over that fallen carriage that for some reason you can't get over. And get the hell out of this town. You can climb over it, Ethan. For God's sakes, you can climb over it. I have one more thing to say before we get into the news. It's for Dustin, actually. Desert Sky Cacti wrote into us and said, "Hey, CDC, my question is for our JRPG boys, but it's really not for me. Will you be playing Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Remastered? Also, Dustin, did you ever end up finishing Persona 5 Strikers? I am personally finding it hard to get invested with the gameplay, even though I love the characters. Thanks for all the JRPG love y'all bring to the podcast." Micah was saying that she was going to start up Persona 5 Strikers on Switch soon. That's a Musou, so I wouldn't really call that a role-playing game per se, but Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne got decent reviews, although I was seeing that it is being criticized for not having done very much. Are you going to play this game? It's kind of like a Monster Hunter kind of game, monster collecting game. I have no interest in it personally.
I honestly don't even know very much about it. I saw that it was announced. I saw like one trailer, but I'm interested, of course, in checking it out. When does that come out? Is that soon?
Yeah, it's out. Let me see. I think it might be out already, if not imminently. Let me look. Oh, God. Show me the release dates. May 25th. So
May
very
25th.
soon. By the time some people hear this.
I'll be playing Biomutant, I think, that day.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the next one for me, too.
Yeah. I'm excited for that.
Weirdly. Oh, yeah. I think it looks
just need
cool.
something. I need something. It does look great. So the thing about this game is I was actually more interested in it before I was really reading about it. I thought it was kind of more of a dungeon crawler, but it is, but it's about raising monsters, and that's just a no-go for me. I used to love that stuff, like Monster Rancher and obviously Pokemon and stuff, but no, not anymore.
So, in regards to the part of the question about Persona 5 Strikers, no, I haven't. And I learned something about myself through the release of this game, is that I need to keep my PC games on PC and my more console-style games on console, because there's something about this game. You don't want to play with a mouse and keyboard. You want to use a controller, right? And I don't know if it's because since in the last 6 months of doing a lot more production work, sitting here in this chair and streaming and whatever, is that I don't want to play this game because I don't want to sit here anymore at my PC. So I think when I do figure out when I'm going to play it, I'm just going to buy it again on PlayStation and play it there so I can relax on my couch when I do that.
Very well done. Well, thank you for writing in. What was this name? Desert Sky Cacti.
Yes.
A little bit of a rhyme there. That's what we're playing. We'll have more to say next week, of course. Let's get into the news as we always do each week and go in order. Some big news this week, although I think we can probably cut through some of these fairly quickly. Number one, as long expected and much requested, The Last of Us Part 2 has received its official PlayStation 5 performance patch, enhancing one of PS4's most popular games for its new console. Patch 1.08 available now will allow you to do a few things with the game on PS5, but the biggest shift is a targeted frame rate of 60 frames, while the PS4 version will remain locked at 30. The brief post explaining the patch on the PlayStation blog also notes that the game benefits from other PS5-centric boosts, quote, such as an enhanced resolution, faster load times, and more, end quote. Perhaps most exciting is the post's exit statement, however, quote, the team has been digging into the PS5 hardware and the possibilities it unlocks since launch last year, and we're excited about what the future holds. This patch is just the first step of working on the PS5, end quote. The Last of Us Part 2 launched exclusively on PS4 in June of 2020 and is the sequel to the beloved PS3 original, launched in 2013. One of PS4's most popular and critically acclaimed games, it comes from Sony-owned team Naughty Dog, who is currently hard at work on The Last of Us' next foray into multiplayer, which is presumably called Factions, among other mysterious projects. Joey Garcia wrote into us on Patreon, just like you can, one of the perks by supporting us on Patreon. He says, hello, CDC, Colin. Naughty Dog released a performance patch for The Last of Us Part 2, enabling 60 frames. Based on your previous talks of your new take on the importance of FPS, while also considering how you will uninstall a game when you finish, is the patch enough to make you want to jump back in and play the story again? For myself, I re-downloaded the game straight away from the iOS app while at work. Love that feature. Thanks, guys. Congrats, Dustin, on the official announcement during last week's episode.
Thank you.
So, no, I'm not. I platinumed The Last of Us Part 2. I will play it again when it comes to PS5 natively. I think that will be more interesting, and that will happen at some other point in the future. But, Chris, what do you think about this performance boost that we're getting via patch? This is something you obviously would want to see, although I don't know that it affects your personal interactions with the game.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll be going back to it. Like, I would be curious to see, to really feel how it plays at 60, just because I'm always curious about that. Like, inherently, I'm just like, oh, man, it's definitely going to be a better game experience, because every single game is better at 30, or at 60 frames, So, I can't argue with that. That's a good thing that they've managed to do that. Do you think there will be a PS5 native version? Because I feel like this is it.
Yeah, I think they will, just because I don't think this is it. I think that they're remaking The Last of Us, right? So eventually maybe they'll just port The Last of Us Part 2 and give it a new trophy list, and maybe when Factions come out. I feel like there's going to be some way that they're going to do it. I don't know that they'll charge for it or anything, but I think the same thing's going to happen with God of War. I just kind of feel like it's inevitable. I know that they did their first boost, but I think eventually these games will just be drawn in to this more native ecosystem. If for any other reason, then they can sell them again, perhaps. Not to the people that already own them, but rather to people that might be interested in them again, or anew.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Dustin, what do you think?
It's exciting. I always love these performance boosts, but it's not the right game. We need Bloodborne, please.
Yeah.
But according to the Digital Foundry video, it's a very good, very solid. And they were fair because they said up to 60 FPS. And in the video, they were like, yeah, there's literally like one point where it goes to 58 frames for a few seconds or whatever. It's like very, very basically locked 60. So we like to see that. I guess the question for me, I don't know if I want to play it. I'm not going to play it again right now. I will eventually. I just don't know. I don't know if they'll do a PS5 version. I really don't. I'm somewhere in between you and Chris in that it would be weird to do this and then kind of ask, not that they're asking people to play it again at 60, but you kind of are. Like, I don't know. It would be weird to do a third boost of the game.
That's the thing. It's like there really isn't anywhere to go now. Like, if it's got a boost in resolution and a boost in frame rate, and you're already playing the game at like 60 frames, I don't know how they would justify a native PS5 version that isn't just this exact thing again. And if they do that, why not just buy the old one and just have the exact same feature set? Like, maybe you can get like native 4K, maybe, but like I don't even know how important that really is. As far as like, is it gonna make you buy like who's gonna buy The Last of Us Part 2 6 years from now?
Right.
You know, like I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting kind of time we're living in, just because we're living in an unprecedented period where there's just a lot of cross-dimensional or cross-generational functionality in ways that we just haven't seen before. So it's a valid question. I am with you, though, Dustin. I don't know where the hell this Bloodborne thing is.
It's so difficult.
I feel like this should have been the first thing to get a 60 frame patch, but
yeah,
there's got to be a reason why they're not doing it.
Well, part of the reason they would have to bring in From to do it, which is the first thing, and then the other thing is that, from my understanding, with doing some of these PS5 patches, which is like backwards compatibility plus, they're much easier to do on the newer SDKs of games, and so Bloodborne lives on a much older version of the SDK, so it's beyond a patch.
Good insight.
Yeah, that's a thing that I learned from Digital Foundry. But so that's why they've kind of said that they're kind of tapping the well dry as far as these newer first party games that'd be easy to go back and do. But they did. Ratchet and Clank was a game that was on an older SDK that they figured out a way to do it. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah,
thing,
that is also go for it. That is also like a Sony owned, it's Insomniac, so it is a bit of a different story. But they would have to just get like From Software, and like good Lord knows what the hell they're even doing right now. Like Elden
we'll talk
Ring
about them in a little while. We'll talk about them in the letters at the end.
It'll be fun.
Something to say about them.
If they do the PS5 version, are they going to add DualSense support where it's like, wow, you can really feel the guy's skull cracking when you hit him with the bat? We need that next level immersion.
Yeah, that haptic, I would love that. That would be excellent. All right, well, speaking of Insomniac, number 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart has officially gone gold, meaning that core production is complete and the game is ready for publishing. Word comes by way of Insomniac's official social media feeds, which let eager fans know that the game will be ready to go for its June 11th launch exclusively on PlayStation 5. Rift Apart is the 16th Ratchet & Clank since the original launched on PlayStation 2 in 2002, and it's the first truly new Ratchet & Clank game since 2013, when Into the Nexus quietly launched on PlayStation 3. Ratchet & Clank was, of course, remade in 2016 for PS4, where it sold extraordinarily well, spurring on the development of this game. Rift Apart will be the first PlayStation 5 exclusive game released by a first-party studio since launch, accounting, of course, for the bundled-in Astros game, and only the third AAA exclusive from first or second party whatsoever, the others two being Demon's Souls and Returnal. I think this game is very important to PlayStation 5. Personally, And again, there is new stuff out there. They're talking about it and showing it a lot. It's actually closer than I thought. For some reason in my mind, I was like, this game's coming out June 30th. I have no idea why I had that in my mind. So when I saw the tweet, I was like, oh yeah, June 11th. This is great. Okay, great. Chris, are you excited?
I am, yeah. I'm not that big on Ratchet and Clank, but this one looks. There's something in the air about this one that is just. It looks gorgeous. It runs really well from what we've seen, and just in general, just the instantaneous loading looks like it's going to do a lot of benefit to the gameplay, and just this grapple mechanic that pulls the world to you is just really cool. It's not necessarily anything like super new in any real way. It's just kind of subversion. It's like a subversion of expectations of how a grappling hook works, but it's just kind of cool to see that level of creativity kind of thrown into something that very could have easily just been, oh, grapple to that point. It's like, nah, pull the world toward you. That's so cool. And the weapons look fun. It looks like a fun story. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. I don't have a huge history with this franchise necessarily, but I have a lot of admiration for Insomniac, and this looks like a lot of fun. And I'm excited to see like what it's going to. I'm excited to see what this does that we haven't seen, that will kind of take advantage of some of the PS5's latent kind of potential. I'm curious as to like what the bosses are going to be like, and whether or not they're influenced by what they can do on new hardware now that it's an exclusive. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I did see in brief passing Zircon is confirmed to be in the game, which made me very excited. I love Mr. Zircon. He's like my favorite. So it was very excited to see him as confirmed. Dustin, what are you thinking about Ratchet?
I'm excited. I'm going to play it the day it comes out. All 70 doll hairs. I'm ready to spend it.
Of course.
That's a day or two before E3, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually right in the middle of E3, right? Well, or at least right in the conferences.
Yeah.
Or some of the press conferences. Because didn't we say something was on... Just say something... Oh, like Keeley's thing starts June 10th. That would be a Thursday. And so then the 11th is a Friday, right? So then the next week... You're right.
Yeah, and then I know Microsoft is on, I think, like a day or two after Ratchet.
So, yeah, it's a very exciting time. Very interesting time.
Very fun. That's going to be a great episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Excited about that. Number 3. We promised we would talk about Returnal now. I really want to see what you guys think of this. The sad reality about Housemarque's PlayStation 5 exclusive roguelike Returnal is that sales appear to be sluggish. But it has nonetheless attracted critical acclaim and a loyal fan base, and that fan base may want to read what website Axios recently had to say about the game. Just a quick point here. Axios is writing about video games now. This is a very well-known political website, and Stephen Totillo, who used to be the EIC of Kotaku, is doing Axios' games coverage. So, famously, as the website noted, Housemarque's CEO, Ilari Kutinen, wrote a contentious blog post on the developer's official website entitled Arcade is Dead. I totally had forgotten about that. This apparently signaled the end of the studio's phase as a smaller, arcade-oriented team after its second-party PS4 game Matterfall and third-party game Nex Machina both failed to set the world on fire. They actually came out in inverse order. As such, Mikhail Havari, a friend of mine, Housemarque's marketing director, told Axios that he thinks, quote, we're now finally understanding what we can do, end quote, after Returnal, and that in adjusting, they were being, quote, realistic about what we're going against, end quote, in the larger market. What's interesting is that Housemarque began making Returnal in 2017 as something more in line with its older games, just larger and in true 3D. As such, the idea of a roguelike headed by a female astronaut was always in the cards, but it was the story elements and high production value that were added later, largely by Sony acknowledging this and giving them the time and space to breathe and realize the game's true potential. If you're curious about the team's controversial decision to not provide save functionality, however, you'll be pleased to know that they're apparently considering what to do and that the game is receiving new content as well as continual fixes. Returnal, which launched in late April on PS5, is Housemarque's 8th second-party collaboration with Sony. 2007's Super Stardust HD on PS3 and 2013's PS4 launch game Resogun are amongst the most beloved of the bunch. So, Chris, I'm curious what you think of this because the story is very interesting in that Sony identified what was interesting about the game and gave them all of this opportunity and space to figure it out, but didn't say you should make a third-person shooter with a story. I mean, that's kind of the thing that bothered me is that Sony came in and kind of gave this game life, gave it the world and the hook and all of that, but didn't just take it to to the extreme and say, like, you know what, you have some important shell here. You don't need to build it quite like this. Or it could be an option to play the game like this, but you should have some sort of campaign. I think I can't let go of this idea that they almost had something truly awesome. And I know some people believe that they have something truly awesome, and that's great, but I think it could have been something that could have been both. Because you could have still had this functionality in the game, but you could have had a tailor-made version of the game with a story and all of that, and then maybe have some sort of, it's almost like a horde mode or something where you play it later.
Yeah.
So what do you think about what Housemarque had to say here to Axios?
It's a little confusing because wasn't Returnal built off of their kind of scrapped Battle Royale?
Well, I was reading about that. The Battle Royale silently apparently came out on PC. So yeah, like years ago though.
Wait, it was released?
Yeah, which was surprising to me too. So it's called Storm Riders. I actually forgot to bring this up like months ago. Let me see here. I'm going to pull up Housemarque.
That is an earth-shattering revelation.
Yeah, no, it's an earth-shattering revelation to me too. Where is it?
Storm Divers. Oh, wow.
Yeah, there it is.
That's crazy.
So, but why isn't it not even... It's not even on there. Oh, it says unreleased still here on Wikipedia. I guess it didn't... Oh, maybe it was in early access or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
That might have been what it was. I saw something where people had like an opinion on it. And I was like, how? Because I thought the game never came out. But anyway, so So anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
No. I just that was really confusing because I was just like, wait, was this always? Was it a battle royale or not? Like what? That was just like kind of confusing to me. But in fairness, I do think what they have is interesting and cool. And I don't know if necessarily. I don't know if I would have preferred something with a fully fleshed out narrative or like, full on, a linear campaign or a linear progression. I just wish that the roguelike that they attempted to make was a little bit more in keeping with the traditions of what roguelike design is. And because I do think what is here is potentially like a really amazing roguelike. I just think the approachability of new runs and just the stranglehold that RNG has, and just some of the quality of some of the equipment that you pick up is just not enticing enough, and just there's just small elements of it that I think are off that are really getting in the way. But I do like that they decided to make a roguelite, because I do like these games. Like Hades is one of my favorite things ever, and it's just nice to see Sony get involved in something that's a little bit more experimental, that isn't necessarily like, hey, here's like a linear story again, because I do think they would have gotten criticized for that as well. I do think they would have been like, hey, here's another third-person action adventure game, but it's a shooter now, and it's like, all right, that's cool, but I thought it was cool that they were allowing Housemarque to do something weird and kind of different for Sony first party.
Sure.
So I appreciate that, and obviously they're working on multiplayer stuff. It's probably like long away. But I don't know if I would have preferred a different version of Returnal. I just wish that the Returnal that we got was a little more tight.
Fair enough. I'm by the way looking. So this was my confusion with Storm Divers. It has a Steam page, which I totally forgot. They don't really look any different than games that come out. You just have to. The only difference is the add to your, because I just use it on a browser. Add to your wish list. So it's actually not out yet. So I was totally wrong. And it says release date 2020. So clearly that came and went. But they have all these videos, and I don't know. Yeah, it just never came to be. So I was a little confused by that too. But I guess that's a clarifying point for us. Dustin, what do you make about Housemarque's potential? I actually agree with Chris. It is nice that they, in some way, shirked making a PlayStation game. It would have been very, you could tell 9 out of 10 teams that work for or with PlayStation would have done a very specific thing with this world, and they did something else with it, which is I do appreciate. But I do wonder if their intention was to make their first 2 second-party exclusives very hard. That's the one thing I'm wondering. There's no accessible game until Ratchet that's exclusive to the console. I mean, you could play Miles Morales on PS5. Obviously, Astro is very compatible, but it's a pack-in. So I'm interested in that. What do you think about all of this,
Yeah, I think that my issue isn't in the fact that it's a roguelike or that it's really hard. And I don't want to go over all the things that we talked about earlier, but I feel like, again, just like referencing, I'm sorry, and we're broken record here, but specifically Hades, it's like there's a way that you can make a game like this that's really hard, and really fun and really rewarding and satisfying. And I think that is very difficult, but also approachable to people. So I don't know. In that aspect, I'm wondering if people are scared off by that aspect, about it being difficult, about some of the technical problems, and also in the fact that it's not like the other big PlayStation games. Like, some people just want more of that style as well. So I don't know though. I wonder, when it's selling soft, does it mean that it's not like selling like PlayStation other first party, or is it like, oh, we're losing money and this is not?
No, I doubt that they're losing money. I mean, maybe they are. I have no idea. I have no idea what this game doesn't seem like it costs very much, but no, it's selling soft just anecdotally because we can see how it's performing on certain country charts that do post weekly. So you can just make apples to apples comparison. David Jaffe brought up on his last stream that I was on that the game is like totally fallen almost completely off the UK charts already. It's not selling well. It's definitely not. And if it was, Sony would say that it was. So
yeah,
it doesn't take away from what it is. I don't think this game was ever going to sell at $70, and I'm so sick of talking about the price. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Well, you kept bringing it up, guys. So number 4, speaking of roguelikes, perhaps the most famous and beloved roguelike ever made, Hades, is coming to PlayStation 4. While we don't have official word from its developer Supergiant, its release is essentially guaranteed, as the game has been certified for a release in South Korea for the console, always a harbinger of things to come. This is big news for the PlayStation audience, since Hades has been frustratingly absent from the ecosystem. Having launched in September of 2020, Hades is only available on Switch and PC, and there's obviously no word yet on when we can expect this migration to come. Hades is Supergiant's 4th game. The well-regarded team sprung onto the scene with Bastion in 2011. That came to PS4 and Vita in 2015. Its 2nd game, Transistor, was launched on PlayStation 4 in 2014. Its 3rd game, Pyre, followed in 2017, also on PlayStation 4. It's unclear if there will be a PS5 iteration of this game. Chris, what do you think? Hades is certainly coming over, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm very excited for people who haven't played it to play this game, because I adore Hades, and I like Supergiant in general. Like Bastion was one of the first isometric games that I played that I really just fell in like complete love with. That soundtrack and that gameplay, and just like the voiceover work in that game is just, all of it's just so superb. And Supergiant's just a really special team. And they've got a secret sauce over there that like
definitely
is really, really cool. And I don't know. I'm really happy that this is going to be available to a lot of players who haven't played it before, because I think it's going to be a real treat, especially if you like roguelites. Because it's probably the best one. Like, that might be a big statement, because I know there are a lot of there are a lot of people who might think, I don't know, what's another, like, I think Binding, right? Is Binding?
Yeah, Binding of Isaac. When I said it was the most beloved when I wrote my thing, I was trying to think, like, what would be the challenge to this? And that was the only thing I could really think of. But I don't know that Binding of Isaac has the love that this game does.
It might have the love, but I'll tell you, like, Hades is really, really just so good. And you guys are in for a treat.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And I always bring this up when we talk about Supergiant, but I love that Supergiant's creative lead and writer, Greg Kasavin, he was the editor-in-chief of GameSpot. So I always love that he came from Games Media and is like one of the great game makers now, which is cool.
Yeah.
He was always really nice to me, too. Dustin, what do you think of Hades coming over?
I'm very excited. I've played quite a bit of it on PC. And honestly, I'm so excited, Colin, for you to play it, and especially in contrast of all these conversations about Returnal, because I feel like, I'm very hesitant to recommend games to you, Colin, at this point in our relationship. But I think you'd like it. I'll leave it at that. I think you'd like it.
I think I will too. I mean, it looks like a game up my alley. I didn't play Pyre because I downloaded it, like I bought it, but then I started playing and I was just not in the right headspace. It's like isn't it some weird like soccer RPG? You know what I'm talking like, or like some sort of ping like. You're using a ball or something. That's what I remember about it. I think maybe people think I'm crazy. Maybe I'm talking about a different game. But I think it was that game where you're like controlling some sort of ball. On
Pyre is the weirdest one.
Yeah.
In my experience, like people usually like swear by Bastion, and Transistor has a lot of fans.
I like Transistor. I platinumed that game. I like that game a lot.
Yeah, I never got a chance to finish it, but
very
I should.
Very emotional, that game, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love Supergiant. I could gush about them for like 10 hours probably, but
dude, Pyre is
Yeah, talk to me.
NBA Jam with wizards.
Right,
awesome.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what I was thinking. I knew there was like a ball involved. That's why I remember I couldn't wrap my mind around it when I played it. But I have it. I wanted to buy it at full price, so that's why I did it when it came out. And I'll buy Hades, of course. Yeah, I'm very selective. But you know what, Dustin, recommending me these kinds of games much safer. I am so sick, and I've said this now, of people recommending me CRPGs that I actually want to strangle someone when they do it.
Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah, Divinity Original Sin 2. People just recommend me games they like. That's what people do. It's like, I like this game, so you'll like it. It's like, well, why would you think I want to play a CRPG? I fucking hate computer role-playing games. I hate them. If you recommend me Divinity Original Sin again, I don't know what I'll do.
You're not gonna like.
I don't know what will happen.
Colin, you should play Fallout 2.
Fallout 2. I've never played Fallout 2. Personally.
Yeah, I don't expect that you would have. Me neither.
I don't think almost. To be honest, I don't know that many people did.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Fallout 1 and 2. Although in exile now with Microsoft. So
yeah, Wasteland.
Number 5, multiple media sources are reporting on a rather interesting piece of news. It appears defunct and one-time beloved developer Free Radical Design is reforming, and it's doing so in pursuit of reviving its old series, TimeSplitters. Some of you will remember that Free Radical Design created the TimeSplitters FPS franchise upon that game's launch on PS2 in 2000. Sequels came via publisher Electronic Arts in 2002 and 2005, and their last game, labeled as Free Radical, was the 2008 PlayStation 3 exclusive FPS, Haze. Later purchased out of bankruptcy proceedings by publisher Crytek and rebranded Crytek UK, they helped launch Crysis 3 in 2013 before silently folding anew. Now, under the tutelage of Embracer-owned imprint Deep Silver, the new team will begin working on a TimeSplitters revival soon. It's important to note that work hasn't begun officially yet. Deep Silver did say a while ago that they were going to revive this. I don't think anyone expected that they were going to make a team called Free Radical. So, pretty interesting. Chris, I suspect you're a TimeSplitters fan. I don't know if I'm making that up, but it seems like a game you would be a fan of.
It's like I had a TimeSplitters game for the PS2 that I wasn't super into it, but I like from what I've seen of people who are good at TimeSplitters playing TimeSplitters, I like that. But like I've never been like good at TimeSplitters. I don't know, there's something about it that like it doesn't click with me as a game to play for whatever reason. But I enjoy like the general kind of like idea behind it, and like some of the story beats are really cool. This is really cool. Like this is kind of like really, really interesting. I'm very curious as to what like a modern day TimeSplitters would look like. One could hope for maybe a Haze 2.
That would be awesome.
If we're getting
I gotta see. I'm kind of Haze game. I don't think Sony owns that IP. Let me look. Yeah, I thought so. Ubisoft published Haze. For some reason, Ubisoft published Haze and only released it on PS3. I mean, it must have been some sort of third-party deal they had, but Ubisoft could revive Haze. They could revive Haze if they wanted to. I remember I used to work with a guy named Michael Thompson at IGN. He was like a really weird, kind of like, I don't know, kind of a weird heterodox writer. He was really an interesting guy. And he wrote all of these articles that everyone used to get mad at all the time. And I remember he wrote like a huge, staunch defense of Haze. I'll never, ever forget that as long as I live. But yeah, I remember him just being all about Haze. And a little interesting connection to TimeSplitters. But TimeSplitters and Red Faction were my first exposures to FPS on PS2. So they have cool little legacies with me. Do you care about this, Dustin? You don't strike me as a TimeSplitters person. Also, you guys are young, so TimeSplitters would have come out when you were not too young for it, but pretty young.
Yeah. When was that? I remember
2000. TimeSplitters came out when you guys were little kids. Yeah, it wasn't like it was like a big
2000.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There hasn't been a TimeSplitters game since 2005, I think.
Yeah.
I was like 6.
Yeah, so you would have been young. So it's not like you would have necessarily been exposed to this. But do you know anything about this franchise or care about it?
I believe I played some of the multiplayer of TimeSplitters 2 when someone like brought it to my house. I remember You could play as a monkey in multiplayer. And I think that the multiplayer would be like, you could change the settings so you could dual wield weapons that you couldn't dual wield in the campaign, which I'm always down with, like dual wielding shotguns. That's what makes Wolfenstein awesome. So I hope that they continue something like that. But no, unfortunately, I do not know a lot about TimeSplitters.
So, yeah, I'm just looking at something real quick. Yeah, perfect. So I wanted to make sure I don't know why this came to mind, but you know what 2 shooters are that I want to get ported so badly to PlayStation is the Conduit and the Conduit 2. Did you guys ever play those games on Wii? High voltage software. They're like American history style, or like it's almost like not American history, but it's like why can't I think of it? Like the Illuminati and everything. And they were these like Wii exclusive shooters. They're totally unrelated, but I've always wanted those games to get ported. I think I'm pretty sure Sega published them. Yeah, High Voltage made them. They still exist.
Yeah, I played this at a friend's house and I thought it was cool, but I never picked it up.
Yeah, I don't know why that came to mind.
It looks very TimeSplitters, in fairness.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's why I came to mind, because it does look like TimeSplitters. I was looking at it too. All right, number 6. Outriders is officially a hit. Word comes by way of its publisher, Square Enix, which noted in a press release that its third-person cover-based shooter was played by 3.5 million players in its first month on the market. This would, of course, be far more impressive had the game not been on Xbox Game Pass at launch, where it's effectively playable for a small subscription fee, but data also suggests the game sold well elsewhere, including on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Available playtime may tell the tale. Your normal Outriders player in that 3.5 million group paid for 30 hours, which is an amazing stat. As such, quote, we look forward to expanding the Outriders, expanding on Outriders in the future, end quote. I miswrote that. The press release notes in part. Outriders is from studio People Can Fly, the one-time Gears of War support team that is also well known for its 2004 FPS Painkiller, which never came to PlayStation, and its 2011 FPS Bulletstorm, which came to PS3 that year and PS4 in 2017. Ko Kano wrote into us. Howdy, boys. As an Outsiders lover, Colin, what do you think of the 3.5 million players? We don't know about sales yet, but that does seem kind of low, especially for a day one Game Pass game. Cheers and stay sexy, boys. I don't think that sounds low at all. I think that's awesome. I think they're probably thrilled by that.
Yeah.
It's unclear, again, how many people played it on Game Pass, how many people bought it elsewhere, but 30 hours of an average game time, they must be absolutely thrilled. You can beat the game in 30 hours, so I got to go look at the trophies. I played it for way longer than that, but people are playing this game. Chris, what do you think? Outriders seems to be a kind of a tier hit. I don't think it's going to be like the Division style big hit, but it's this unique game that's not a game as a service, and yet it kind of is. And they've promised more content, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great to have a new IP like this. Especially, I like this especially as kind of like, not a redemption story for People Can Fly, because they've never done anything like particularly like bad. Like, I actually like really loved Bulletstorm. The only problem I had with that was just the control schemes just felt a little stupid.
Sure.
But it's just nice to see a studio that's actually like kind of like done a lot for a long time, finally just sort of hit something right on the head and just like hit it in the right moment and find a lot of success in it. Always makes me happy to see that. I totally forgot that they made Painkiller. That's awesome.
Yeah, they did.
That totally escaped my mind for whatever
And that's
reason,
another game. That game was ported to Xbox, but it never got a PlayStation port. That would be a really interesting $20 release, $15 digital release.
In fairness, that's Painkiller is a very PC FPS. Like, it reminds me a lot of like Team Fortress. Like when they brought that over to console in the orange box, and it was just like, okay. It's like playing Counter-Strike on like a Wiimote or something. It's just like, this doesn't really work all that well. But that's really cool. Like, I'm really happy for People Can Fly. That team is like just kind of interesting to me.
My theory, Dustin, is that, and I tweeted this out, I think Square Enix is going to buy People Can Fly. I'm going to make that declaration. I feel like this is a partnership that makes a lot of sense. They are publicly traded, so they have a market cap of $500 million. So it's not that expensive. I mean, that's not that expensive for the team. And even if they had to pay a little bit more than that, $650 million to convince the shareholders, they have a half dozen studios around the world. They've scaled up. So I feel like this is a good cultural fit for Square Enix to make Outriders into what they wanted the Avengers to be, I think, but will be sort of this competition, this competitor in this space that others are playing in. I think this is a good first start for them, and I feel like letting People Can Fly walk away is going to be a big mistake, because I assume they will have other suitors.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, especially just in the fact that Outriders isn't designed really. It has elements of a live service game, but it's when I previewed that game at PAX, they were like, "No, this is not like Destiny. It's its own thing that you play, and then when you're done, you're done." Not that they won't do DLC or something like that, but I could easily see a scenario where for Outriders 2, they're like, "Yeah, it's going to be exact what you loved about Outriders 1, but we're making it more of a live service game in that there's going to be content, there's going to be seasons, there's going to be XYZ." And like you said, then they can kind of have their own live service game after the failure of Avengers.
Well, we'll have to monitor this and see what happens. But I'm a huge Outriders stan, and I'm very glad that it did well. Number 7, publisher Electronic Arts has quietly created an all-new internal team, and they're being charged with making the style of game many listeners of this podcast will very much enjoy. Word comes by way of the publisher itself via various media sources, which announced the new studio, which doesn't have a name yet, and it's being led by Kevin Stevens. Stevens is a longtime developer and executive from the WB Interactive Media family of studios, where he's best known as the head of Monolith Productions, the team known for its Fear series of FPSs, horror FPSs, and of course its duo of Middle-earth branded Lord of the Rings RPGs. As such, EA's new team, led by Stevens, will, quote, create an open-world action-adventure game, end quote, according to GamesIndustry.biz. And an EA exec told the website, quote, "The action-adventure space is a hugely important genre in our industry and to us at EA. Players and fans of those games are so passionate," and ellipsis, we've also recently had the success with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and we would love to entertain more fans with similar interests, end quote. This new studio will be built out of Seattle and will be Electronic Arts' first internal attempt to begin poaching Washington State's well-known pool of developers at studios ranging from Sucker Punch and 343 to Turn 10 and Amazon, and of course Monolith itself. Chris, what do you think? EA is changing its tune and creating a studio to make what sounds like an open world game. And this is quite different than what they were saying a couple of years ago. It also makes you wonder about if Visceral could have just hung on for a little bit longer into this new era. What do you make of EA's? This is quiet. A lot of people aren't talking about this, but EA is creating a new big team.
Yeah, and a seemingly single-player one.
Yep, definitely.
That is really fascinating. The industry is so weird because like you have all these companies that seem to, sometimes everybody moves in the same direction at once, and then you have kind of like days like today or like even just years like this where it's like Ubisoft is focusing on free to play, and then here's EA just all we're gonna make a single player like big budget studio, and it's like, what is going on? Does anybody know what they want to do? Right. Like it's very interesting. I think this is cool. Like I think it's definitely always good to have more of these types of games. I just hope that it isn't not an Assassin's Creed reskin, but I just hope it's not. I don't know, obviously Assassin's Creed is Ubisoft. I'm just saying, like, I want it to be something that is. I would like to see something that looks like 1313 again, is what I'm saying. Like that level of quality, and that level of like taking its like just a very serious approach to like a modern single player game. And I hope we don't get something that's a little bit just I don't know, like I don't want them making remakes, you know, or like revivals of old genres that are just like, hey, here's this old franchise that we have, let's just make it an open world thing and just task this new studio to do it. I hope it's something new and cool and, you know, just interesting in general.
Well, I like what you said about this is a studio that's being made to make a single player game. Even the hit that they talk about in their press release with Fallen Order comes from a team that is not a single player team. I mean, they make single player games now, but that's not what their charge is. So that is an interesting point. Dustin, what do you think about the potential of this new Stevens headed team? A lot of good games came out of Monolith when he was there.
It's exciting because I feel like maybe in a way some of these studios, or at least EA maybe, are learning from the past, in that maybe they thought their single player games were dying because they kept trying to haphazardly attach multiplayer and co-op and try to adapt.
Like Mass Effect 3.
Right. It's like maybe they realized, like, hey, we can have really successful free-to-play. We can have really successful multiplayer games, like, I don't know, Apex or something like that. It's very good at that one thing that it's trying to do. It's not trying to do everything. So having a single-player studio make a single-player game, third person, whatever, maybe there could be some success there instead of trying to make everything do everything.
Yeah.
We'll see. Ground floor. I mean, this is going to take time. But like I said, this is EA's first opportunity as well to start getting talent in Washington, which is readily available from Microsoft Studios. I mean, even Undead Labs and others are in that area. There's a lot of teams there to start poaching off of. Number 8. It's unclear exactly what the ultimate ramifications will be, but it sounds like Warner Brothers' parent company AT&T is selling part of its media holdings to Discovery. The deal, worth $43 billion, according to website GamesIndustry.biz, is interesting in that the holdings will be spun off into a separate entity that will merge with the Discovery itself. As noted by the website, quote, the announcement of this deal made no specific mention of Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, end quote. However, further reporting from IGN indicates that some of the Warner Brothers studios will be going to this new company while others will be staying behind. It remains totally unknown which are changing hands and when, but the studios WB owns that are in question are Harry Potter RPG Studio Avalanche, Lord of the Rings Studio Monolith, Mortal Kombat Studio NetherRealm, DC Comics centric teams Rocksteady and WB Montreal, and Lego team TT Games. Michael Granger wrote in. Actually, you know what? We'll take this one after, because this is a more fun follow-up before we even get into that. Michael, we'll get into you in a second. Chris, I'm just curious. We don't know. We don't have the details about how this is all going to shake out yet. Which of those 3 teams would you want to keep if you were selling the rest?
Oh, my God. If I was selling the rest?
Yeah, so you have Avalanche, Monolith, NetherRealm, Rocksteady, WB Montreal, and TT Games. So 6 studios of real consequence. You can keep half of them. I think it's obvious. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I would want to keep Rocksteady, clearly. And I think honestly TT Games.
Yeah, I would say so.
Like, yeah, those are the ones that I view as like a little bit more important. But this is weird to me because didn't they just have this whole spiel about how they're not for sale like not too long ago?
Yeah, well they were for sale, then they weren't. Now I guess they have a suitor that is giving them a lot of money. I mean, $43 billion is big merger of some of these assets. So Dustin, what 3 studios would you want to keep?
Yeah, I think TT Games and Rocksteady for sure, but maybe the third one in there is NetherRealm.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I would think that would be the 3 for sure.
Yeah.
What's going to be interesting about this is that, and I guess it's going to kind of peel out this way, is that we have to figure out. I don't know. AT&T through WB has some sort of connection with DC. They might even own some of it. So you would presume Rocksteady and WB Montreal are going to stay. And then you have to think about Portkey, what is their relationship with Avalanche and WB, and where does that go? It's quite complicated. And then of course you have TT Games, which is only operating through Lego licenses, and then external licenses from Disney and others. So it's very, very complex to see where these are going to go. And I wonder if AT&T and Discovery are listening to individual offers for individual studios, because it would be very interesting for Sony or Microsoft to come in and peel some of these guys off themselves. But we'll see what happens. If I were Sony and I was looking at this, I would go after NetherRealm first and foremost. Yeah. Just because I think they fit best with what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And
they also fill
fighting game studio.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. All right, now we'll get to Michael Granger, who said, hey, 3 Cucketeers, hope you are well. My first time submitting this Sacred. Welcome, Michael. Just a question regarding the semi-uncertain future of WB Games based on recent reports. If someone came to you and said, we are going to make one final Lego game with a bold old budget, I don't know what that means, and no IP being off the table, what franchise would each of you pick to get the treatment to get them, if you pick to get the treatment to give them a send-off? keep filling ear holes with your words, Michael. You gotta learn English a little bit better next time you write it. I'm sorry, you have to do it. I should have rewrote that a little bit. I gave you too much credit, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, I like the story, Lego. Chris, my answer immediately that came to mind is like Lego Seinfeld. I just feel
That's
like
exactly what I thought.
Yeah. So, all right, we're of the same mind. Dustin, you pointed. Was that also what you were thinking?
I thought you were going to say G.I. Joe.
Oh, that would be cool too. But no, Seinfeld would be.
That's so dumb.
Would be like a Lego Seinfeld.
Well, if there's a merger with Discovery, maybe we can get a Lego Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe.
That'd be awesome. I love that. I love that.
Dang.
You know he's an opera singer?
I didn't know that. No.
Baffling.
Baffling. Indeed.
Like Lego Cash Cab.
Whoa.
Dustin, what do you want?
The first thing that came to mind to me, no IP being off the table. We don't need to make this game for kids. I want Lego Blade Runner, where you play as a Lego version of Harrison Ford or Ryan Gosling, maybe, depending on whether this is 2049 or whatever. And you solve crimes, you find replicants. There's lots of Lego nudity and Lego drugs, smoking, whatever. Make this the M-rated Lego game.
Give
and
it a
can
whole
be better
new
than Cyberpunk.
Whole new definition of
image.
bricks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole new image for them. That'd be amazing. Like the Lego John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, I love that movie.
It's great.
Number 9. We may just have a better idea of why Sony was interested in purchasing the fighting game tournament EVO, which it did a couple of months ago. As reported by website IGN, Sony has filed a patent, first submitted in 2019 but only published publicly in 2021, that would allow viewers of live-streamed competitive events to bet on what they're watching. It's really that simple. The patent provides PlayStation the ability to allow its users to enter the increasingly vibrant and incredibly lucrative betting scene that has gone totally mainstream in sports in recent years. And what's perhaps even more notable is that Sony isn't patenting this only for PlayStation. In fact, it makes specific note that this patent could apply to its rivals and the filing notes, mention them by name, Nintendo and Microsoft. Now, it could just be connecting unrelated things. In fact, that's probable. But Sony purchasing beleaguered but beloved EVO in March of this year could be framed next to this patent as a very wise money-making move. When I saw this, Chris, I was fascinated because the basic gist is that it will just allow Sony to put overlays over live stream events in which different people can take and make bets on events that are happening. I love sports, obviously, as people know, and sports betting has always been a thing, but it is huge the last 5 to 7 years, just absolutely massive. People are betting on everything. And people are betting on presidential elections. People are betting on there's all sorts of things that you can bet on anything you want. And
Yeah.
I feel like this is actually really kind of smart. It makes you wonder if Sony getting EVO was specifically for this purpose. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think it is smart. It's an interesting kind of it's an interesting area for Sony to get involved in. I don't know if it has really anything to do with EVO. I think our previous assumptions about why they were buying EVO is probably like more accurate. I do feel like patents often are kind of cited against each other as kind of like, oh, maybe they're going to do this thing because they filed these two patents, when realistically these companies patent shit all the time, and a lot of times most of it doesn't even get used, most of it doesn't see the light of day, most of it doesn't get iterated on until like 10 years later. There's a lot of reasons why I think this might just be coincidental, and I don't think they're necessarily related, but I do think here's what I think. I think they're not necessarily related, but I think they will probably use these in tandem at some point. I don't necessarily think it was like a conscious decision as far as like a strategy. I just think it's like, oh, well, look at what we have here now, and kind of just like working with what you realize you have more than a plan, because I don't necessarily understand why they would pair this exclusively with EVO. Like, why not? Like, if they're working on like this overlay, why do they need EVO to utilize it?
Yeah, they don't. I think it's just easier. There's so many, there's this labyrinthine system of laws, especially in the United States, about betting and where you can do it in states that it's legal and states that it's not. I don't know. It's complicated. This is also going to open them up to a lot of, this is going to be exactly like people buying shit on Fortnite right? Like little kids. That's why I'm a little wary of this.
That was what I thought too.
Yeah.
I thought like the first thing that came to mind was like this is probably going to elicit some reaction of, is betting in video games okay? Because gambling isn't. So like, what?
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this goes. Dustin, are you going to bet?
No, but I'm interested in getting involved in this business. Can we get some Last Stand Media Sacred Symbols bets going somewhere else? Like,
Sure.
how about here's a bet. Will Colin get the curtains in the year 2021? And fans can bet yes he will, no he won't.
I said 12 to 18 months, so I mean maybe I will sooner than that, but we'll see. We'll see.
It's variable. We could how many wilds per episode? People can bet on that from Chris. I mean,
yeah, you can have all sorts of side pots if you want. If
Yeah.
you're motivated to do so.
Let's make it happen.
We'll be keeping an eye on this. I'm a gambler a little bit, but I like gambling like a lot of money in very small ways. So instead of having like lots of different bets going, I'll just have a lot of money in like a fantasy football league or something. I don't have that much time to focus on all this stuff. People make a lot of just. I mean, I spend a lot of time in Vegas. People are just making all sorts of bets. So why not get involved in it? Good job, Sony. Number 10, mega publisher Take-Two Interactive, owners of Rockstar, 2K, and others, revealed its yearly financials in which, according to website GamesIndustry.biz, the company did more than $3.5 billion in revenue from March of last year through March of this year, with a higher than $500 million profit. NBA 2K21 has surpassed 10 million units sold and has a staggering 2.3 million players per day on average, with consumer spending up by players 73% year over year. Grand Theft Auto 5, meanwhile, has surpassed 145 million units sold since launching in 2013, initially on PlayStation 3. The game later came to PS4 and is now slated for PlayStation 5 with an official release date of November 11th. GTA Online is obviously still booming too. In fact, consumer spending is at an all-time high in-game. Other notable sales numbers include Red Dead Redemption 2 at 37 million units sold, Civilization 6 at 11 million, The Outer Worlds at 3 million, and PGA Tour 2K21 at 2 million. Take-Two has 21 games slated for launch in the next fiscal year, and 4 of them are apparently core games. We know one of them is NBA 2K22, an original IP from Gearbox we don't know anything about, and 2 unknown titles. Unfortunately, it ain't all roses. You'll recall that 2K was finally ready to rejoin the NFL game-making business with an arcade title, to contrast with EA's Madden, which is a simulation game. That game was intended for launch this calendar year, but won't happen until 2022 at the earliest. NeoJD writes in, Chris, he says, I gotta do it. With the next-gen upgrade coming in November, will GTA 5 be the best-selling game of 2021? What do you think?
I'm just so confused. Like, it's so... I just don't understand, like, what is going on with Grand Theft Auto 5. I've played Grand Theft Auto 5.
It's not that good.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like, what, I agree with you. It's like, what the fuck?
Like, I don't know, man. Like, it very well could be, only because this game seems to just defy reality. Like, if this was any other... If you were asking me without the context of, like, the fact that this is sold so much already, I would have been like, oh, yeah, it's probably going to sell okay. It's probably going to sell fine. It's probably going to make a lot of money. But if it's still selling like this, and it's got, like, 145?
Yeah, 145 million.
That's insane. I would have to assume that it's going to sell a ton. Will it be the best-selling thing will it be the best-selling PS5 thing? I don't know. I assume if you're into Grand Theft Auto 5, you have it already, and you're probably fine. Like, I wonder how many players of that game care about fidelity and frame rate enough to jump into a new version of it, even though they've been playing the same 2013 game for the last, like, 7-8 years. Like, this is unpredictable science. I have no idea how to even remotely go about figuring that out.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think to NeoJD's point, and to Chris's point, Dustin, I don't think it's going to be the best-selling game of the year, because I think that'll be Call of Duty. But
yeah,
I think it'll be in the top 10, for sure. I don't think it's ever going to not be in the top 10 until they make another Grand Theft Auto. I'm just so perplexed, too. Like Chris said, Dustin, it's got to be said that Grand Theft Auto 5 isn't that good. Like it's good. It's very fun. It's really explosive and funny. But 145 million copies? It's the second best-selling game of all time.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that GTA Online is just so incredibly big. And it's what I find often is that it's the players of that game are not our audience necessarily. Like, for example, my friend Brandon, his dear old dad, has been playing GTA Online since it came out. He plays GTA Online basically every day. Not just one example, but when I hear about people playing GTA Online, they're not... I mean, they're into video games, obviously, but they're not into playing a lot of video games. They're into GTA Online, and there are millions of these people that play just this game. And then you get the whole RP community on Twitch, which you have to assume was another big boost with the popularity of that, which... Dude, I've watched some GTA RP streams just to like figure out what's going on, and that's like a whole different thing. So, and you have to imagine that Rockstar is looking at the role-playing community and like thinking, how do we do something with that in a way that makes us money? Unless maybe just providing the game is enough, but...
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, because I look at Grand Theft Auto Online and I'm like, what do you do? Like,
right.
Like I had fun with Grand Theft Auto 4's online, like just running around New York City, just shooting my friends and like running them over and stuff. And it's like it's fun, like chaos, but I don't know if I could play that every day for 8 years. Like that's I don't know.
It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, somebody who listens to the show who plays a lot of GTA Online, please write in because I need some window into this world.
Yeah, please
that
do.
I'm just not getting.
We'll get to it next week.
Yeah.
Tor Thorne wrote into us on Patreon and says, "Hi fellas, loving the uptick in VR talk recently. Now that the release date for GTA 5 on PS5 has been announced, I was wondering your guys' thoughts on this report from last summer that Rockstar has a AAA VR game in the works. Could this be anything other than a GTA 5 port to PSVR 2? Could a GTA game be the key to PSVR 2 achieving unit sales closer to PSP than PSVR 1 and Vita? Much love from Michigan's Upper Peninsula." Thank you, Tor, for writing in. It's an interesting thought, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be big.
Sony and Rockstar have a very close relationship now. Microsoft used to be much closer. Remember, they had like the special edition PS3, the special edition PS4, this port for PS5. Seems to be Sony-centric. Do you think that we're going to get GTA 5 in VR? And if so, do you think that would be exactly what the doctor ordered?
I think that would be really cool. I think because that game, they added a first-person mode to that game like several years back. Like I think it was like a year or two after the original game came out. You could play the game in first person, which was inherently like by itself really cool because that takes a lot of work. Getting a game to look proper in first and third person is not like an easy task. So they very clearly had something in mind with that. But if they could take the chaos of VR and merge that with like, or the chaos of Grand Theft Auto and merge that with like VR chat, that would be pretty massive, I would assume, especially considering, in the PlayStation space, there's not really an equivalent match to VR chat. And I could very much see that being like a huge boon. I don't know if it's necessarily... I don't know if it's going to boost the sale of VR too bad, but it's definitely going to boost the usage of VR. I think a lot of people who like maybe have a PSVR on hand, or maybe they haven't touched it in a while, they might jump on to Grand Theft Auto in VR. That sounds really sick.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Dustin? Do you think this is connecting two dots here?
I think it's definitely, and there's another dot that we haven't connected. Rockstar has made a VR game with L.A. Noire.
L.A. Noire, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
So, to me, L.A. Noire is just them like, okay, what is the idea? What is the possibility look like of doing, we'll just say a GTA style game. Obviously, L.A. Noire is different. I'm not saying it's the same, but it is similar in a lot of ways. Right. What does that look like? what's the possibilities here. And I think that, man, that would be... I feel like that would be the killer app of all killer apps of a release, to have a GTA 5, just because, again, the monumental success, second best-selling game of all time. And we've been talking a lot about VR social spaces, and this kind of covers that in a lot of ways too, or it could. So,
yeah,
a lot of potential.
All right, just a couple more items to get through here. Number 11, a few other interesting financial items have also been revealed over the last week. Japanese publisher Square Enix reported its highest revenues ever, a stunning turn of events for a publisher that seemed to be kneecapped by the subpar reception of its expensive internally developed Avengers game. Even with losses from that game, Square Enix posted a nearly $500 million profit. Final Fantasy VII Remake in particular brought profit, while Avengers still contributed mightily to overall gross dollars. Meanwhile, indie developer Devolver Digital, founded in 2009, is apparently preparing to go public. British publication The Telegraph notes that the publisher's IPO could be in the range of £1 billion. Devolver began as an upstart publisher, primarily working with the team it now owns, Crow Team, to release titles in the Serious Sam franchise. Its first major crossover hit was Hotline Miami, which it published on behalf of Denatun Games, and that came in 2012. And these days, the publisher is the financial might behind Fall Guys, Shadow Warrior, and more. And upstart publisher Focus Home Interactive has revealed that it has raised some $85 million from private investors in exchange for 20% of the company. According to website GamesIndustry.biz, the money will primarily be used to purchase new studios. Focus Home Interactive should know that Canadian-American team Lilymo Games is very much up for sale. We'll take some of that money off your hands. No problem. And number 12 is a wrap-up. Website Komatsu reports arcade shooter Mighty Goose comes to PS4 on June 5th. Action RPG Kitaria Fables comes to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on September 3rd. Visual novel Replica, adventure game Legal Dungeon, and robot racing game Break Arts 2 all come to PS4 later this year at a yet undetermined time. And Rarebleed develops 2D fighting game Blazing Strike comes to PS4 and PS5 in 2022. Website Push Square reports aerial combat game The Falconeer Warrior Edition comes to PS4 and PS5 on August 5th. Cartoonish My Friend Peppa Pig comes to PS4 on October 22nd. And action RPG Lies of P comes to PS5 at an unknown point in the future. And finally, the official PlayStation blog reports Eterna Noctis comes to both PS4 and PS5 on December 15th, while 2D exploration game Rhina and Jericho is coming to PlayStation 5 at an undetermined point in time. I did this out of order. Oh, there's two more things. Disco Elysium Final Cut has been cleared for launch in Australia on PS4 and PS5 after getting its 18-plus classification reversed, according to multiple sources. And finally, Final Fantasy 14's long-awaited Endwalker expansion has finally been dated and is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 late this year on November 23rd. Teacher JKP wrote in and said, "Where is the real Colin and what have you done with him? On the previous episode, Colin mentioned that he will be purchasing and playing Disco Elysium soon. What's changed from your previous stance of not supporting this developer? Have you become a red? Do you currently feel the ground rumbling from McCarthy spinning like a turbine in his grave?" No, I feel like I was being hypocritical. I feel like I need to play the game. It shouldn't really matter. I said my piece about them and their apparent love of Stalin, but I still want to play the game. So I'm going to buy it.
Fair.
All right, boys, let's get into listener mail as we always do. 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon to end every episode of Sacred Symbols. Thank you again for supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access and all of the other perks you get there. We could not do it without you, so thank you very much. Traylon wrote in and said, "Hey, fellas, recently on Knockback, they, me and my brother, brought up QuickTime events, and I'm curious how you all feel about them. I, for one, loved them and gave action set pieces a more epic feel. However, due to complaining from people, we are seeing less and less of them. Good examples is that they actually took out some QTE moments in 2008's Spider-Man due to fans complaining about them when we saw early demos, if I remember correctly. And as we know, most recently in God of War 2018, it didn't have any at all, which I felt took away from the epicness God of War had in the past. Thoughts? Chris, what is your thought on QTE?
I hate them. I'm glad they're gone. If I could kill them again, I would.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't like QuickTime events. I find them. If you want me to play the game, then let me play the game. You know, don't put me in this cutscene that I have to keep pressing play on. You know, is basically how I feel about it. And like, there is something of a charm to older QuickTime events. I think of like some of the funniest ones where like in any of the Spider-Man games, there's a myriad of brilliant QuickTime events and fail states for those QuickTime events that are just unintentionally hilarious. I'm sure there's a sizable portion of the listeners who have seen the first QuickTime event in Spider-Man 3 for PS3. Every single fail state of that QuickTime event is hilarious, but it's not good. You don't want that in your game. You don't want people dying because a civilian is now just at the mercy of a bomb, and it zooms in on her face, and she says, "I'm going to die," and she explodes. Like, that's not necessarily what you want in your AAA game. And I do think, like, I just find them a bit dated. They feel like... they just feel like they interrupt the flow. It feels like they want you to play the game, but they don't. It's almost like the game wrestling the controller away from you and only letting you push the buttons while they do everything else. And it's like, you want an action set piece, just give me a good cutscene, or let me do the action or let me do the action set piece. I've never... I think maybe Resident Evil 4 and God of War were the only two games that I felt did them kind of well. But even those had, like, some that I was just like, all right, what, I gotta have sex off screen, like with like, I don't know. I just find them kind of annoying.
What do you think, Dustin?
I don't know if I have much to add that Chris didn't say. Fuck QuickTime events. Don't let them rest in peace. May they be tormented in hell forever and ever. Amen. Chris put it beautifully. And I'm not even going to repeat it because what he said was so good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I feel like it's interesting to look about where they come from, and obviously like the old Don Bluth games like Dragon's Lair and stuff, which are all QuickTime events. But then it was really put into, as we know, God of War really helped popularize QuickTime events. And when I replayed it for Knockback for the first time in years, I played it on Vita. I was surprised by how quick they were. I remember them being on the screen longer. Like, they're annoying as fuck especially the analog stick ones in God of War. They were we got way lazier with them later where they became easier. But I agree, QuickTime events just became very strange. I would rather actually literally just watch the event. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it just gives you this weird... Because I remember early on when they started throwing them into cutscenes, when that was like a new thing, and, the game perspective would shift away from like what the normal game is. And then, you'd be like, oh, okay. And then you'd like maybe put the controller down. And then you'd die. Because the game was still going. And it's like, wait, what? And then if you failed at the older games were really bad about this too, where they wouldn't, if you failed at the end, they would make you do the whole fucking thing again. And it was just like,
yeah, it sucks.
Now you're making me watch a cutscene that I'm not even really paying attention to because I have to press the fucking buttons. I'm not even looking. It's almost like reading subtitles and only reading subtitles and not watching the movie. That's kind of how it felt with a lot of QuickTime events. It's like I'm paying attention to what button I have to press, and I don't know what I just did.
That is a great way to put it. I've never thought about it like that, but that's exactly how I feel. It's like you can't even appreciate what's going on. You're just so focused on not dying. Dude, and I feel like this had to have happened to everyone. I sit down the controller when for a cutscene, not all the time, but regularly, and everyone has died from a cutscene that suddenly had a QT event that you're like, oh no, I don't like it.
It's awful.
All right, well said, boys.
Sorry, Traylon.
Yeah,
Bill,
totally.
You're wrong, Traylon. Bill McNeil wrote into us and said, "Do gaming journalists play too nice? Could fans and/or the gaming industry benefit from an Adam Schefter type? Someone that breaks news and embargoes that many companies don't want revealed until they're ready." So for you guys that don't know, or the audience that doesn't know, Adam Schefter is an NFL, what they call an NFL insider. And this guy, along with a couple of other people in NFL's orbit, just break every story long before it's... Like at the draft, there was the NFL draft a couple weeks ago, like these guys were just tweeting out the draft picks before they were even announced. It's like ridiculous. I do feel like we kind of have that already. I think that Jason Schreier and Jeff Grubb, who's a complete asshole, but a few other people there, they are the Adam Schefters. They leverage their connections with these companies and they thrive. Like, no one goes to Jason or Jeff for their reviews. they go to them because what the purpose they fill is as this news conduit. So I feel, Bill, that we already have this, but I'm actually curious, Chris, what you think about. I think Maddie said this the other day, right, Dustin? That he was concerned that too many leaks are coming from too few people. Basically, it is interesting, Chris. Don't you think that we don't have? When you read political journalism, which I do, there's a shit ton of things being released by all sorts of people, but it's never like that in gaming. It's literally the same few people over and over again. So is that a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a problem. It's definitely like an area that could use some improvement. I don't think things are worse now. Like, I don't think things are terrible just because we have too few sources. I think they would be like maybe like slightly better if we had more, but like I don't know. I don't know what the overall improvement to the industry would be if we had more. Is kind of what I'm getting at. Like, I don't know how much impact that would really have. I do wish that more people had that access, because it does seem like, you know, the big few are the only people who can ever really break anything. But at the same time, it's like we know people who've broken things.
Sure.
You know, it's not like,
of course,
it's not completely unheard of that like somebody who's totally independent, who's not necessarily affiliated with you know, GameSpot or Kotaku or IGN or any of these people. It's not uncommon, or it's not super uncommon that somebody completely unaffiliated breaks a news story or like puts out I've gotten leaks of things that I'm just like, well, that's cool. I'm not going to share it because I don't want anybody getting in trouble. But like, I've come across information that I definitely shouldn't have, and I don't even do this work.
Right.
So I think it's less that too few people have access, and it's more that the people who do have access just aren't really super interested in leaking shit. Like, I'm not interested in leaking the stuff that I have. Like, I have a ton of information about Halo that I could leak, but I'm just like, why would I do that?
Yeah, I'm kind of a similar way now. I think Jaffe and I talked about that a little bit on our show, where I know a lot about what's going on in PlayStation world, but I'm not a reporter anymore. So it doesn't really seem to be relevant unless there are certain things that I want to say. I just don't want to burn people and want to maintain those conversations, and they're more interesting to me. You know, I'm more interested in keeping these things going for years than saying something once and then never having anything to say again. That's kind of my stance.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Dustin, what do you think about the reporting pipeline?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about his question about are journalists too nice and not willing to break stuff? Because that came up a few times, particularly with Kotaku and like always revealing the Assassin's Creed games or whatever. And
yeah, like clockwork.
Yeah, I'm a bit of two minds about it. I really don't know, because in one sense, I think that if you are a reporter, then it is your job to report on information that you find. And if you have confirmation, then yeah, that makes sense to me. On the other side, video games straddle this weird line of products and art that have a lot of people that are really passionate and very excited to tell the world about their thing in the way they want to. So I feel very sympathetic to that. If we were working on a big project and then someone went and blurted it out in not the way that we had intended, that would make me very upset.
Yeah,
that would piss me off.
It's worth noting that it's very different than politics, because politics usually things that are whistleblown in politics are usually like, I don't know, criminal or like
right.
or like, you know, like things that are like actually important, whereas this is just kind of like taking the wind out of the sails of somebody's project. You know, it's not important that you know what the next Assassin's Creed game is called before they tell you. It doesn't really change anything. All that it changes is you know the name of it earlier, and it doesn't really have any effect. Whereas opposed to in political journalism, things that are usually, you know, dug up with you know, private sources are usually a little bit more consequential. They have a lot more, even just as the information like by itself, just the knowledge of that information shapes like the rest of the conversation, as opposed to like, you know, I just don't know if it's the same really as far as gravitas goes. But
well, let's go to this next one. I want to kick this one to you, Dustin. Hi, I think I'm real. He wrote in, or she says, "Good afternoon, boyos. Multiple sources have confirmed that Elden Ring will not be at E3 2021. My question is, what the fuck? Thanks." Dustin, why do you care about this game? I mean, apart from it being Miyazaki, why are you so confident, or like, why are you so eager when we haven't seen anything about it?
You've phrased this in an interesting way. Why am I so eager? I don't know. Am I eager about it? I'm just
bring it up. Yeah.
I'm looking. I mean, From Software, they won Game of the Year with Sekiro. Bloodborne, one of the top, most beloved PlayStation exclusives, right? And then Dark Souls, of course. So yeah, I have faith that this game will be fantastic. As far as the whole thing about the release and what's going on with this game, I don't know. Clearly, Japan dealt with COVID very differently than us, and from what I can tell, it seems like a lot of them weren't able to transition to working from home nearly as well as we were able to in the U.S.
It's because they live in fucking cubbies in Tokyo, so it's a little hard for them to probably work comfortably from these places.
Right.
They're used to being out and about.
Right. And the other thing is that Elden Ring is supposed to be a very different game for From Software. And so did they announce it too early? Most likely. But
yeah.
I think that maybe they announced it too early and then COVID. But I think there's also a possibility that's just like they're really trying to figure out, because the big thing about Elden Ring is about it being open world as opposed to their other games, which are much more semi-open, more linear experiences. So I don't know what's going on. I think it got announced too early, but I think we can feel there's just certain developers, whatever you want to say, people that I trust in a way that I feel confident will be good. I'm not saying to go out and pre-order it. It could be terrible.
Don't pre-order anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go by reputation and pedigree. It's like it's not unreasonable that if a studio has made, like, let's say like there's a studio that's made a bunch of games and you like 100% of them, and then they announce a new thing. It makes sense that you would be excited for the new thing, and it makes sense that you would be like, yeah, I'm gonna play that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if you don't know anything about it. Like, I know for a fact, like, I don't know what the hell Matter is, this Bungie thing that's like been kind of percolating in the you know, the back alleys in the industry. Whatever the hell it is, I know I'm playing it. I know I'm looking forward to whenever the hell they even put the fucking logo out there. I'm going to be like, ooh, shiny, cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Because those games just feel really good to play to me. They have a good... and same thing with id. Like, if there's another Doom, you won't need to sell me on it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, fair enough.
And, you know, that makes sense. But, hi, I think I'm real here. Emmett, you just gotta play other things. There are other things to play.
Yeah. It'll be here when it's here. Let it bake. I don't want it to be rushed. I want it to be a 10 out of 10. So I don't know. I'm not, it's like, yeah, I want to play it, but I'm not like angry. I may lay in bed at night and think about Elden Ring, but it's not out of frustration. It's just out of the possibilities.
It's an amorous sort of thought that you're having.
Right.
All right, fair enough. Well, we can all take this next one. And I kind of just want to briefly touch on this because it's something we actually brought up earlier. Ambitious Casual wrote in and said, "Hello, my fellow Vic Thigh boys. Hope all is well. I've been hearing many podcasts in the games industry discussing whether the price of a game is justified by the game itself. I may be wrong, but is that really the role of the reviewer to tell the listener if the game is worth its price tag? Been really hating the constant $70 discussion that's been going on in the industry. Thanks for your input." So I wanted to say two things about this, and you guys can have any input you want, but I do think it's somewhat of the role of a critic to say if something is worth the price of admission, because that matters. I mean, the currency is money and time, of course. So I think that does matter. But I will say that I am way over the $70 price tag conversation. It's going to be reignited again with Ratchet and Clank. And I was wondering, guys, could we just agree to not talk about this for a while on the show? Like, I'm just so sick of talking about game prices. If inflation gets jacked up again and we have to talk about it again, we will. But Chris, should we leave it? Should we let the sleeping dogs lie?
I think so. I think best to just accept that this is how things are going forward, and at the same time, you can still have conversations about whether something is worth the money without just being like $70. You know, like it doesn't necessarily have to be focused around $70. Like I do think I mean, not to jump into the question so quickly, but I do think it is the role of the reviewer to tell people, or at least communicate with people whether or not they think something is worth the money. It's not necessarily in comparison to like, oh, maybe for $60. I don't know. It's not necessarily about that. But I know as somebody who's big into Destiny, who was a big fan of Destiny 1, even vanilla, I wouldn't have recommended that game at the price that it was, at $60 for vanilla Destiny 1 with like no story and like a kind of half-assed PvP. No, I enjoyed it, but I would be like, hey, listen, this is not what it should be. And this is not, for all intents and purposes, this is not a complete video game. And I think it's worth noting that, like, hey, you can enjoy something, and even you could put, like, thousands of hours into something, but that's still, like, the value proposition should still be there as far as, like, quality and, like, what the general consensus is to what a full, complete game should meet. And, you know, I think that's the role of a reviewer, is to just communicate that effectively to the viewer or the listener or the reader or whatever. But I do agree, yeah, the $70 conversation's a bit... We're here.
Yeah,
we're here.
Yeah,
now.
it's trite. Dustin, can we agree to put it away?
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with that. As far as the aspect of reviews and including whether game pricing is that part of it, I don't want to get into the semantics of words, but to me, it's like a review should be basically a product that helps people decide on their purchasing decisions. It's not a critique. Critique to me, and there's a Venn diagram of review and critique, but
yeah,
to me, when you say review, I'm thinking of, you know, like an IGN or whatever, and it gets complicated because you have scores that are mixed in, and we've talked about how scores don't make sense, but like, for example, a game like What Remains of Edith Finch is a fantastic game. I would maybe, you know, I just said scores don't make sense, but listen to my example here. It'll make sense. I'd say What Remains of Edith Finch is a 9 out of 10 for me. But if they charged $70 for that game, it's going to be a pretty big asterisk on that 9 out of 10 because it's not worth $70. And I think that's an important thing to talk about in a review, which again is a product in which people use to decide if they want to buy a game or not. So yeah, price I think is definitely part of that conversation.
Well said.
Yeah.
Alan Hardy wrote in one for me. I can answer real quick. He says, hey guys, this one is for Colin. Dragon Quest's 35th anniversary is May 27th and is being celebrated with a live stream that day. There is a ton of speculation as to what might be shown, including Dragon Quest 12. Any thoughts on what you might think might be revealed or what you would like to see in the next Dragon Quest entry? So you guys aren't Dragon Quest fans. I'll touch on this quickly. One thing I would really like to see is that in Japan, alongside Dragon Quest 11, they released the first 3 Dragon Quest games on PS4 as individual downloads. I think you can get them. They have trophies and everything, but I think you got them for pre-ordering, and you can download them as individual games and also purchase them individually. And I was kind of hoping that those would eventually make their way over here. I don't want to spoil the end of Dragon Quest 12 or 11, so I don't think this is a spoiler, but I will say that there is an awesome credits celebration of their old games. They show all of their old games. It's really neat. You guys should go look it up if you're interested. I don't think it's really has nothing to do with the game itself. I think it was just a celebratory thing for such a long... I remember the credits took like hours. And it was like 7 in the morning. I was just like, I want it to be over with. But my hope is that I want them to take their time with Dragon Quest 12. I think there was 2 other things that might be interesting. Is Dragon Quest 10 has still never come out here. It's an MMO. It was a Wii game. And it would be interesting to see if that game could live again. But I would hope that they would show Dragon Quest 12, and I would hope that they would have some sort of cool Western slanted announcement. The West never gets cool Dragon Quest announcements, really, that they were going to release those 3 games on ROM. So that's what I would say. Alan Hardy, thank you for writing in. And finally, Alex Green wrote in and said, hello, my sweet boys. I had a thought last week about the developer Spark Unlimited. The video games they developed, in my opinion, were completely underrated. A Legendary, Turning Point, Fall of Liberty, that underrated gem. Lost Planet 3 and some others. Poor reviews and low sales were inevitably the downfalls of Spark Unlimited as it was closed down in 2015. It had me thinking, what team of developers closed down their doors that disappointed you greatly? Love the show and be safe. I like this question to end everything on this week. Chris, what is a studio, Alex asks, that disappointed you greatly when they shut their doors, and who would you like to see maybe come back?
Didn't have to think about this for even a second.
Yeah.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
I loved Pandemic games. Like, there was something about them that just had such an air of fun to them. It felt like they had fun making it. They had fun thinking of just the premises. Destroy All Humans, Mercenaries, and the first Battlefront games. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the Saboteur as well. Just the concept of like liberating Nazi-occupied Paris and it being like tied to like, Nazi-occupied places are like black and white and they like get a splash. They like become color.
Yeah, very cool. It's too bad that game killed them because that was probably their coolest game.
Well, yeah. Well, they were on the way out before that game even really had, not that these games were like, these were like obviously very much in the middle market space, but I don't know, man. There's something about they even did Lord of the Rings Conquest, which is just Battlefront with Lord of the Rings. That game was a glitchy mess, but it was so much fun. And that was just a really cool studio. I remember knowing, like, whenever I got a Pandemic game and that logo would come up with the gas mask, ironically very prescient now, but I just knew that I was in for something that was fun. Wasn't like dramatic or like AAA or like genre defining or must have, but something that was always just going to be a real good time. And the fact that Battlefront has been revived, the fact that even Destroy All Humans saw a remaster and is likely getting a second one
with an all new parent,
Yeah, and that's, I don't know, man. I really like that studio, and I wish at the very least some of those IP could come back. I think Mercenaries could genuinely flourish. I really think that game could thrive.
Yeah, it's interesting because with EA's all the studios they shut, it's certainly Pandemic along with, I would say, Maxis, and we mentioned Visceral earlier, probably the big three losses that people were kind of shocked by. I think Maxis actually really surprised people a lot because they almost seemed like untouchable. But Dustin, what's your choice for this question?
I have 1.5.
Okay.
I'll do the quick half is Irrational Games, which I know that they live on in a new way, but
Ghost Story.
Yeah, with Ghost Story, but I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Ghost Story is like much smaller.
Yeah, it's a tiny team.
Right. So I don't know. I loved Ken Levine doing big AAA stuff. Maybe I'll be convinced otherwise with Ghost Story. But the other one that I could think of, I was kind of scratching my head about this, and I was thinking just back to my childhood years and thinking about the joy and delight I had booting up a game from Neversoft. Now, they're kind of like a two-franchise studio between Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero. And it's unfortunate because I think that they were at their best at the early part of those franchises when they could really be creative. And then it's like Activision just kind of like, smashed those franchises into the ground. And don't forget also, they did that really awesome Spider-Man game on PlayStation 1.
Yep.
So...
Yeah, Chris talks about that sometimes.
Man.
Yeah.
I loved that game, man.
That was a cool game.
Like such a class. That is that is nostalgia incarnate for me, that video game.
Yeah. Dude, also, I was looking on the Wikipedia page. I didn't know they did that game Gun from 2005.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was a cool studio, man. I even like that logo of the eye.
Yeah.
Getting like so 90s.
And here's the thing. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I really even liked like Tony Hawk Underground and Underground 2. Like, I really liked those games. Maybe it was just because I was a kid and I was really into skating, but that was kind of the end.
I knew people who would defend those games.
Yeah,
like I knew a lot of people who were totally into Tony Hawk's Underground. I wasn't. I was only into skating as far as like the arcadey, like the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Right.
And that was as far. And even like to this day, like I only learned when the remasters came out. Like, oh, I never knew how to play these games.
Yeah.
Because I would just skate around the park and do an ollie.
Right.
And that was about it. Or like hold circle in the air and like twist a little bit. And that was like the most I ever did. I was never like a proficient player of those games, but I loved them. So the second they started getting a little bit more complicated and a little bit more proper skate sim-y, I was like, okay, I this is cool, but I don't know if I have the proficiency for this.
Right.
The answer I came up with, it got really dark again. Sorry. The answer I came up with was Fun Bits Interactive / Titan Studios. So for PlayStation fans, Titan Studios made Fat Princess on PS3, and then they kind of turned into Fun Bits Interactive, and then Escape Plan came out from Fun Bits Interactive, and they did Fat Princess Adventure, which was not very good. And then they've kind of disappeared, but they came to mind for me because they were like a really comical, irreverent team. And do you guys ever think about Fat Princess, about how that would never, ever, ever, ever happen today? It's a game about an obese woman in which people on two teams feed her to make her heavier so that she cannot be moved to their castle. That's what the game is. Fat Princess is a great game, and it's not playable anymore. It was an online only game. But I love that character. And I know they try with Fat Princess Adventures to kind of make it a more childlike game. It was like a co-op game. But it's very sadistic. It's like a very sadistic and fucked up idea of like these two sides warring over this princess, and in order to like capture her, they just force feed her. And it's just about obesity. Dude, the Fat Princess DLC pack was called Fat Rolls, I remember. FATROLES. It like gave you new classes to and I'm like, this would never happen today. So there's some, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know what? I would say if there is a studio that could do that, it's the Behemoth.
Yeah.
I think the Alien Hominid guys, Battle Block Theater guys,
yeah.
They have a similar kind of irreverence where I feel like they really could get away with something like that, but very few. You're not going to see another Fat Princess type thing.
Yeah, especially from a first party. I mean, it's a second party game, but like Sony published this game. It's an Escape Plan, which was a Vita launch game from Fun Bits, was awesome. I mean, that's a really awesome game. It's one of the games I think I might have underscored at IGN. We were talking about games I've underscored and overscored. That Lil and Large, I love those characters. I think they're really cute, and they were always really nice to me too. I really was enthusiastic about them, so they always wanted to talk to me. There was a woman named Deb Mars that worked there for a long time, who worked at Sony at Santa Monica for a long time. A lot of really clever people working there. So they kind of went into like the indie PC space and just disappeared as they do. So that was what came to mind for me, because I was originally going to be like, Zipper or something, but that's a lame answer. I wanted to go to something a little more obscure. So people that remember Titan Studios with Fat Princess, and then of course Fun Bits with Escape Plan. That was my answer. But that's all we have this week, boys, for Sacred Symbols, the PlayStation podcast. Chris, closing thoughts.
Man, I don't know. I think this is a surprisingly meaty episode.
It is.
I feel like we had a lot to say.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to the comments. I'm really interested.
Yeah, me too. We'll see.
That'll be fun.
Hopefully people take it as it was intended, but we'll see.
I hope so. But
Dustin, closing comments.
Not much other than thank you everybody for all your nice comments on either YouTube or Patreon about my joining of the third chair. It was very kind of everybody. I appreciate it. It's very, I've said this before on my streams, but never on the show. It's first time coming on the show, pretty intimidating. It's a very fan beloved show, so you don't want to screw it up. So
No.
I'm honored and very thankful that you guys have accepted me. So I appreciate it.
Welcome. And of course, Dustin will be leading the spoiler cast next week. That will go live on Patreon for Nier Replicant. Please do support us on Patreon if you can afford it, and you have the inclination to do so. Patreon.com/LastStandMedia. You get early ad-free access, exclusive access to Sacred Symbols Plus, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, get your name in the credits. There's all sorts of things that you can do there. Listen to us on free feeds if you'd like. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us nice reviews on iTunes, etc. We really do appreciate you, and thank you again. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun Maldonado. Sacred Symbols' executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.